laundry on my luck, win the BBR. Your Vancouver Titans are BBR Season 3 champions. We are going to be able to pick up back-to-back BBR championships.
Worst fucking final battle of all time.
Hi everyone, Amos here. The chunk! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! The chunk! The chunk! The chunk! The chunk! Please! The chunk! The chunk! The chunk! The chunk!
How's it going, my children people? Dr. Slacking, the Slacking Doctor, back, and Earthquake his face! Earthquake the shit out of his face! I want to make his face quake. Live? Live. We lived! Sutter pop! Sutter pop.
What is up, guys? It is Keegan here. Set up. If it's fucking Choice Scarf, what's it called? Arc Result, then I'm gonna be heated. But I'm not, we're not losing to that. We're not losing that today.
What is up, my little Danos? GlitchhxCity, yo goes to the Helsinki Dragas, and try to just finish this off with a star with High Dragon, hopefully clinching us a finals appearance, as we do massive amount of damage, cause we crit them while at it. Let's go, High Dragon.
Oh, you to this. Oh, he's Terrablast. Do I live this? No, I don't live this. I lived? I lived? I lived? Wait, I lived that? +3/+3, I lived that.
Trainers, what is going on? Drewby here. There it is. Is that it? Is that it?
Yes! Yes! Marauders are playoff bounds! Let's go, baby! Big W!
Hey, how we doing, guys? Gray here. So Shadow Ball should knock us out from this range. Of course, we're putting in the finest. You know, I thought the set would do alright. I didn't expect it to be in this position.
What's going on, beautiful people? I am the Grandmaster, and I also go by D.Rey. Oh, fish! And we have Roxa. Fish! 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 Pop off, fish!
Yo, what is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Could we see a Dragonite sweep here? Please, Dragonite. You haven't swept all freaking season. I need you. No Chillin' Berry, you die. Okay, I think we have this one in the bag now. Okay.
What is going on, everybody? Weedle here. Let's get the RNG. Let's get it. Rock Throw, that's what I'm talking about. Woo! So Rock Throw's gonna knock out the Gyarados. Rock Throw.
Hey guys, John Jr. here.
Oh my gosh! Somebody sign me, dude! Holy shit! I'm him! I'm him, bro!
What's poppin', people? J-Bear here.
Yeah, that's choice bands. That does kinda ouch. For choice bands that? Boom. Dead Paladin. Let's go! Finals, baby! Finals, baby! Finals!
Guys, welcome back. Welcome. Moonblast. I do. Yeah, so actually this is kind of no risk for me. Genius. I'm a genius. Just took me a while to figure it out.
Classic Mountay.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kyle A, and I am your coach of the Miami Dolphins, and we are the only team that matters. Okay, let's go. Y'all know I got that heat. Y'all know I got that heat at all times. I keep that thing on me. Give me a crit. Oh, you're dead. Let's go! King!
Hey guys, OG Albina here. Moth! Do your thing. Win the speed tie. And get the U-turn. I can't watch. I can't watch. I can't watch. I can't watch. Look at my mirror. What the?
Hello, my name is D-Double, but you can just call me Double. You. What?
What's poppin', guys? Hi. Here we go. Let's get it. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself on. Oh, it's cold. What a morning. Say hi to the people, brother.
How's it going, everybody? Good morning, good morning. Are we ready for the BBR Season 6 draft stream?
Yeah, dog. We got our blankies. We are good. And check us out, bro. After like how many streams? We got it right this time.
I know, ready to go. No technical difficulties yet.
Yes, don't give me that energy. Hi guys, what's poppin'? Like Owen said, thank you guys so much for joining us. This is exciting. This is season 6 of the GlitchhxCity Battle Royale. Today we're going to the draft stream. We're gonna be discussing what's been drafted, going one by one, kind of breaking down our analysis as we get our first impressions for this season. Hope you guys did enjoy that breakdown video, that announcement hype video that was created by Kirby, one of our admins, probably the shadow leader of the BBR. So we appreciate Kirby so much. You got any first thoughts? Starting things off, bro?
I'm very excited. I think this coaching lineup is really exciting. A lot of great talents. Pulled a ton of people out of retirement. We got Vepsis in here playing. We pulled Dr. Slacking out. Nate. This is one of Drewby's first leagues back. This is the PPL. So there's a lot of really cool coaches here. I'm really excited. It's going to be a really tough season.
And team, do us a favor if you can tell us if the music's not loud enough, if Owen's too loud, and if he's screaming. If you want me to turn Owen down, I will. I swear to God, I will. So we're gonna discuss a little bit of details about the draft before we get into things. Everyone knows typically what a draft stream is. For those who have never seen draft before, first and foremost, what a draft league is, right? So Draft League is essentially the mimicked version of fantasy sports, more specifically very close to fantasy football. As you can see on screen, these are the coaches participating this season. You guys just watched the intro video of each and every one of them in regards to the introduction for those coaches, so we don't really need to get too much into that part, except for in that video between the announcement video and today, unfortunately we did have Weedle Twin Needle have to step away, and so in their place we do have Nate, coach of the New York Noibat. So aside from that, all the coaches are the same from that video. So hope you guys did enjoy that. That was pretty hype. Kirby did a fantastic job. But what a draft stream, draft league basically is all these coaches or people that we call coaches get together and we get put into an order. And it's a snake style draft for a competitive Pokemon draft league. This is a counter team format of singles battling 6v6. We have a tier list where we determined what the viability are for each Pokemon. The better we say the Pokemon is, the higher, more expensive it is. If it's not as good in the battle format, then we have it a little bit lower. So in the highest tier, we have things like Iron Valiant and Dragapult, and things in the lowest tier, we have things like Calyrex and Pikachu, just to kind of give you a little bit of an example. And as the first person picks, they get their selection of whichever Pokemon that they want. And then the second goes on, third, fourth, fifth, so on and so forth. It's a snake style, meaning that on the second round, the last person, the 16th pick, will pick first for the second. And we'll continue that process until everybody has a team of 9 to 11 Pokemon. Each and every week, we will be put up against another coach. You'll be able to see their team, they can see your team, and your job is to create what you believe is the best 6 Pokemon to battle in that given week. This season, we're going to be playing on Saturday, so we're moving from Sunday to Saturday, which is why today the draft stream is live on a Saturday. So each and every week, you guys can look forward to some crazy fucking battles. There's some awesome coaches this season. You want to introduce some of the newbies that we have from this season, from the 12 coaches we had till the 16?
Oh man, like you said, we got a ton more. We have Jay Ricky, who is a promotion from the D League. He had an incredible D League season. Really scary team. I think he had Iron Bundle Dragonite, so I don't know how they let that happen, but he played really well down there, made some great content. He got the call up. Dr. Slacking is a returning coach from previous seasons. Didn't play last season. Took a little bit of a break, but we pulled him out of retirement. Mounte, very, I almost said infamous, that's not the right word. Famous in the community, I guess is a better, nicer way of putting it, for how damn good at the game he is. He doesn't lose very often, so it's going to be very scary to go up against him this season. Nate, New York Noibat, another big draft creator from back in the day, stepping out of retirement to come play us alongside Drewby, who's playing in the PPL. You have myself, you have Kyle A, another BBR veteran coming out of retirement, jumping back into the scene because Wi-Fi draft is so exciting right now and so much fun. So we have a lot of people coming back. Again, more people coming back. We have Jack, aka Gravy, come back to defend his last 2 seasons of the BBR in which he won. He didn't play last season, but he's back here with a vengeance, hopefully grabbing a dub. Keegan's a former NCP coach, a very, very solid player on the Showdown side of the community. Then we have John, Emil, D.Rey. Beth's is coming out of retirement. Our Season 5 champion, J-Bear. Edmonton Coilers coached by Dell or D-Double, the fan favorite. And then T-Row, our D-League champion who got the promotion from winning that league as well.
Just to kind of give you guys a little bit of backstory, exactly what Owen said, thank you, bro. So if you kind of look at this roster, how stacked this is, Jack had to take a break for this past season in Season 5. He was the back-to-back champion, Season 3 champion, Season 4 champion. My man stepped away and technically never lost the championship, so we're calling him the Shadow Champion. We have our current reigning defending champion, J-Bear, aka Jesse 504 with the Graveyard, and we have the very first inaugural D-League champion in T-Row Price. We have 3 champions among us, so it's gonna be a crazy season. The expansion from 12 to 16 was it was huge. The season's gonna be crazy. I can't express to you guys enough. And first of all, now that we talked about the teams, whoever you want to support the most, as we talk about those coaches, the Nightbot is ready. Thanks, John, for showing me that there was a spam thing on. I've turned that off so you can start screaming if you want to in chat. But if you put ! that team name, you will get a link to that coach's YouTube channel. Please do us a massive favor and subscribe to them. We really would appreciate it, so you can follow them as they play throughout the season. And if you haven't already, down in the description will also be a link to the Discord server, the BBR Discord server, where you can not only interact with all the coaches, but as well as getting a ping update when all videos go live. Kirby, as you can see, coach of the Winnipeg Blue Blastoise, is not with us this season. He's stepping away to take a break, and much deserved. He is a super hard worker in the community, and he hasn't slacked off here in the BBR. He's still working really hard behind the scenes. He's actually going to be spearheading some BBR draft league content for us. He's going to be taking over some pick'ems. These will be streams, as well as draft breakdowns, as well as predictions, matchups, things like that. And you don't want to miss it. He's going to have some secondary content, and it's going to be a really good time. He'll be pinging for that as well. So any final thoughts before things get going? Actually, what I want to do is that we did change the mechanics
rules.
Of
yeah,
the
I can
rules
go over.
For battles.
I can go over the draft and the different rules that we have.
Exactly.
And things like that. So
we're connected.
This season,
see what I'm saying?
This season we have 16 coaches. Obviously a bigger pool, but because of Pokemon Home, we have a bigger pool of Pokemon we can draft. So we're still doing one draft pool of 16. You have up to 120 points on Pokemon that you can spend. Those point values will be reflected in the slides, and you'll be able to keep up with how much points coaches have left after each pick, each time too. They have to draft 9 to 11 Pokemon, so somewhere 9, 10, or 11 your team has to be, and you can have 1 Terra Captain. Now, what that means is that 1 Pokemon on your team is allowed to Terra. There are certain Pokemon that are banned from Terraing and not allowed to. A lot of the things that are a little bit over the top that we hadn't banned previously, but after multiple leagues and playing with these things, we realize how broken they can be. I'll list those guys off right now for you. Chien Pao, Dragapult, Urshifu Single Strike, Iron Valiant, Palafin, Spectrier, and Dragonite are all not allowed to Terra this season. Now, we did change a little bit how the Terra rules work. It's still 1 Terra Captain. The Terra Captain is going to be a little bit more expensive because they can Terra. There's a Terra tax. Usually between 2 to 3 points, the Pokemon is going to increase, sometimes all the way up to 4. And now this season, instead of picking 1 stab typing and 1 non-stab typing, you can pick any 2 typings. So, for example, if Chien Pao was allowed to Terra, you could pick Dark and Ice, or you could pick Electric and Fire, or something random like that, right? So you can pick any 2 typings for your Terra Captain, opposed to, the previously locked 1 stab and 1 not stab. Other than that, though, it's business as usual. We're just drafting Pokemon, 120 and a 9 for 9 to 11, and trying to build the best team you can with the least amount of holes and flaws.
Thank you for that. So yes, really important. Also on screen, this is the draft order. So we have the first pick is J-Ricky, last pick is T-Row. So we have the Hera Horde taking the first overall, and then the Columbus Cobalions is going to be the last pick of the first round. The Columbus Cobalions will pick first in the second, and then Hera Horde is last in the second, so on and so forth. With that being said, I think we covered all ground, guys. Let's get things on and popping. The draft is about to come in. Picks are in. Let's talk about it. Oh man, you ready to go, Owen?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Let's get this popping. Round 1, the very first pick of season 6. We have the Hera Horde taking Iron Valiant. I'll let you take it away for the first one.
Yeah, Iron Valiant for J-Ricky here. Incredibly versatile Pokemon. Now, like we said, This isn't allowed to terrestrialize this season, so this is not J-Ricky's Terra Captain, but that doesn't make it any less potent. This thing's speed stat is a huge luxury in a very slow Pokedex. It can be physically offensive, it can be specially offensive. You can run very versatile items, whether it be a choice specs, a choice band, a choice scarf, a life orb, a booster energy. You can boost your energy in your speed, your special attack, your attack, and on top of having that strong offenses, you can set up with a sword stance, you can set up with a calm mind, you can even encore lock things and use your really high speed to your advantage. Valiant's biggest weakness, I think, is going to be its really low Spadef stat, but otherwise it has a solid HP plus defense stat to find opportunities to set up. It can be very scary.
And now we have Ursaluna. Ursaluna's coming in as the new toy. First one off the board. Ursaluna coming from the Hisuian region. Dr. Slacken came back to draft and he says, I want Big Bear. This thing hits like a fucking truck. Ground and normal typing. This is incredible offensive typing. Is super bulky and can soak up literally any kind of hit. But this is an incredible first pick. It's crazy to see it go second overall, but it's no slouch. This thing can soak up hits and deal them this crazy damage. Crazy Trick Room Sweeper. It has incredible coverage, being from the Johto region originally with Teddiursa, so really big threat going second overall.
Next up, another, I would say new toy, because this Pokemon was just completely revamped and revitalized this generation. We have Regieleki. Now this is going to be Mounte's Terra Captain this season. He is allowed to turn this thing into a grass or an ice type at any point in time throughout the season, making this thing one big weakness and being absolutely stuffed by ground types, no longer a weakness. Now you have a base 200 speed Pokemon that can hit everything neutral super effectively and hit them very hard. You have Rapid Spin for hazard control. You can Volt Switch around, but really this thing is going to be very simple. It's going to come in, it's going to click Transistor Boosted attacks, which should get nerfed a little bit, and it is going to hit very hard.
Great Tusk is here. Holy moly, dude, this is crazy. So I don't think that this would have been, I wouldn't have, it's a fantastic Pokemon, but it's like a mid first round pick for me, more towards the end. But honestly, if you really want to get it early, you got to take it early. So the New York Normbats is going to take the Great Tusk. This is one of the top tier premier rapid spinners. As our friend last season, Coach Joey Pokemon MD says, if you don't got one of these as a spinner, kind of not worth it. I don't know about that one, but it is a fantastic spinner. Fighting and ground typing is an incredible type offensively. Defensively, it can be crazy defensive stats. It's able to be offensive, defensive, can set up hazards for you, remove items with knockoff. Such versatility in one Pokemon. It's like a Swiss Army knife, so fantastic mon to go here.
Halifin getting picked up. Now again, this thing can't Terra this season, but Druby picked up an absolute monster. It carried Joe to a great season last season. This thing is a lot more versatile than people give it credit for. Now typically you think of the choice band sets, like the taunt bulk up things, and those two are the main things, but realistically this thing can do so many things. Assault Vest is phenomenal. I've seen Scarf do well. I've even seen Specs pop off. You're not gonna see it very often, but Boom Burst Throat Spray sets as well with Agility are going to be great win cons. This thing is so unbelievably strong with that Priority Jet Punch being just a better Aqua Jet, Wave Crash, Zen Headbutt, Elemental Punches, or I guess just Ice Punch and things like that. Close Combat. There's not really many resists to this Pokemon.
I'm gonna let you keep going, bro. You got Chenpao. Tell us about your cat.
Yeah, Chenpao, I personally think this thing shouldn't have fell this long. Just like with John last season, this thing fell way too long, and I get it, new toys this season, it's a little bit more forgivable this season, but I mean, there's nothing that switches into this Pokemon. I can't Terra it this season like John could last season, but Crunch, Ice Thorn, Icicle Crash, strong priority in its dual stabs, and Sacred Sword, Psychic Fangs, Sword Stance. It's very simple. It doesn't have the most coverage in the world, but it gets the coverage that it needs, and it just kills things. There's simply nothing that switches into Chenpao. Besides maybe one or two things. You might have a Klefki and a Azumarill, but I'll find the means to cover that, I promise. It's not going to be too difficult. So, great Pokemon and the best thumbnail mon in the league.
Yeah, speaking of thumbnail mons, we have Baxcalibur, which can indeed Terra. Miami Dawn fans selecting their Terra Captain off rip with the Dragon and Electric dual Terra typing. This thing's gonna be crazy. So having that Dragon stab on the Terra is gonna be crazy with some super strong Glaive Rushes. This can be offensive as hell with Dragon Dance, Swords Dance, Priority and Ice Shard. It gets access to super sky high attack power. Also with its ability Thermal Bond. Basically, it can't get burnt, and if you attack it with a fire type move, it increases its attack, so you got to think twice, and especially since it can terrorize into a straight dragon type, which is going to resist in the first place. This can get real out of hand real fast.
Landers Incarnate is going to be next. Actually, not a Terra Captain here for Jack, but man, is this thing strong. Now, it did get a little bit of a nerf in losing access to Rock Polish, so that sweeping capability did kind of go out the window a lot, but it did get access to Big Nasty Plot, making it to where instead of a Calm Mind, you're getting +2, and when you get +2 with that Life Warp, Sheer Force, boosted Earth Power, and Sludge Bomb, and things like that, you are going to be killing Pokemon. There is nothing that switches in to a Sheer Force Landorus at +2. You also get moves like Focus Blast as well. You can mix Physical Special to Solid Rocker as well. Great Pokemon. Sandsear Storm is also an option on this Pokemon. A little bit less accurate, but it gives you a nuke. You might end up wanting to run it. You might play Rain Team and run it.
There he is, Dragapult. Finally, I believe that this is the 9th overall pick. This mon falling this far from Grace is crazy, and that's not because of the knock on the Pokemon. There's just a lot of new toys in the game. The new home update, first season, everyone wants to try new stuff. Bear went 2nd overall, but now we have Dragapult. By far, could be debatably the best Pokemon in the Draft League format. One of the fastest Pokemon in the Draft League format. It could be physical, it could be special, and now that it has basically able to run adamant natures, it can run modest natures, it's able to do literally anything that you want in the matchup, which is fantastic. Having the Ghost and Dragon type is great. Being a good spin blocker is awesome as well, but it can literally do anything in any matchup.
Next up, we have Annihilate. John's Terra Captain allowed to turn it into a Fairy and Water type. So unlike D.Rey's last season where he can only pick one of those 2 typings, John gets 2 incredible defensive types with 8, allowing it to bulk up, boost up its Rage Fist, and then kill every Pokemon. It's absolutely insane. Again, this Pokemon, it can run like rocks and U-turn, but as Daniel learned, you probably shouldn't do that very often. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This thing is going to bulk up. It doesn't die to any attack either, especially when you can change its typing on a whim. This Pokemon is absolutely insane and very, very annoying to play around if John gets, the proper means of facilitating those bulk ups and getting that win con, going and things like that.
Stealth Block Annihilate, that's all I'm saying. Spectrier comes back and it is indeed legal, so Spectrier cannot Terra, so this is not a Terra Captain for Amel, but this thing getting a huge buff, simply getting access to the move Draining Kiss. This thing can really steamroll teams with its ability, being able to get a +1 special attack every time it knocks something out. It's able to Will-O-Wisp spam, make a setup with Calm Mind. Before it had a little bit of tougher time pushing through dark types, and just simply adding Draining Kiss is a huge plus for Spectrier. Yeah, it still has to deal with the normal types, but we got Double Kick. But nothing your team can't support. Normals will be fine as long as you draft around it really, really well. Spectrier is going to be a huge threat. And
now,
I guess.
Oh yeah, go ahead, get your pick.
So I'll take Spectrier, so we'll just go double time. We have Sneasel. I'm gonna take this guy. I think he's pretty good looking dude, very fast, a little bit slower than Weavile, the subsequent part from the Hisui region, but it's a little bit stronger, which is fantastic. Great abilities in Unburden as well as Poison Touch. Getting paired off with U-Turn is really, really nice. This thing can really steamroll with Setup and Swords Dance. It gets access to Dire Claw, which is a signature move that has a 50% chance to either paralyze, poison, or make the opponent fall asleep. It is indeed legal. We're treating it as a Feck Spore. We'll see how it goes, and I am more than happy to be the one to test it out. I'm gonna spam this move and see what happens.
That's just gonna pick up Urshifu's Single Strike, picking up back right where Gen 8 left off. This Pokemon is incredible. Now there was a slight nerf to Wicked Blow. I think it's only 5 base power, which realistically doesn't make that much of a difference in the calc when you actually start playing with this thing. And it got a net buff, I think, in getting access to Swords Dance, and even Trailblaze is a way to boost its speed if it wants to. This thing is an absolute monster because you have that new option, but you can also just do the tried and true, click Choice Band Wicked Blow and 2-hit KO the entire metagame, click Scarf Wicked Blow in close combat, you turn around. There's not that many fairy types in the metagame, which is a big thing in my opinion, and especially if you get something that pairs well with this thing that's going to break through those fairies. Urshifu's just, it's a crazy Pokemon. It wins games on its own, it sets up wins for other than teammates. Great mon.
Tornadus Therian, there it is. This is once upon a time in Sword and Shield, this was top 3 Pokemon, and it falls all the way to the very end of the first round, but still has literally almost everything it had before aside from knockoff, which was a big nerf for it because of those sets being able to be more versatile. But nonetheless, this Pokemon is still fantastic. It is not a Terra Captain, but still does what Tornadus does best. With heavy duty boots and paired off with the Regenerator, this thing just literally does not die. It could be bulky, it could be physically offensive, especially offensive. It got its version of that new move that the Genies got, which is really nice. So it does have a little bit of more accuracy but less power than Hurricane, but we'll see what J-Bear is able to do with it this season.
Fish! They'll pick up Jesus Christ. We have G for Dell. Really fun Pokemon to use if you can find the means to get this mon, and it is going to click buttons and kill things. So you'll see this wasn't banned from tearing, but Dell didn't actually end up tearing it, which I think does make it a little bit worse. Definitely not a Pokemon that needs to succeed and shine. Doesn't have the craziest coverage in the world, but between Fire Blast or Flamethrower or whatever fire move you want to click and Dark Pulse, you really cover all grounds that you want to cover. Typically, you're going to see this thing with a Scarf and Specs, but you can run boot sets. You can even run Nasty Plot sets if you're feeling extra crazy. But again, it's a Pokemon that I think is much better utilized in attacking where your opponent can't defend, and a great wall breaker.
Garchomp is going to be the cherry on top for round 1. Garchomp is still doing Garchomp stuff. This thing is so freaking good, so versatile. Losing Scale Shot in Gen 9, which is unfortunate, but it did gain access to Spikes. So having both Stealth Rock and Spikes in the Dragon ground typing is really fantastic, with an incredible speed tier, being able to creep a lot of really bulky things and being an awesome Choice Scarf user as well at base 102. A fantastic attack stat, but also has a really good special attack stat as well. Being able to be very versatile in that sense, being able to be offensively on the physical side and on the special side, and gets fantastic coverage. It can have a really good utility set with that Rough Skin, and plus with Rocky Helmet, it could be realized as a bulky Pokemon. It's an end all be all mon. It's a good glue piece, but can also be a good center point for your draft. So at the very end of it, I'm not surprised that this came off. But the timer turned off here, Owen. Do you have any final thoughts on the first round or anything that kind of stuck out on you?
For me, I thought Pult went really late. Keegan kind of said in the draft. I get it, new toys. I think I got Poway, much less Pult going at pick, what was it, 9 in the draft or something crazy like that. That's going to be an insane thing to build on top of whatever Terra Captain he elects to choose and things like that. So that was the biggest steal of the round in my opinion. Sure.
Yeah, so as you'll notice, guys, at the very end of each round, the timer will stop as the picks start to slowly come out. So Owen and I get a little bit of a time to recap on the round and as we move forward. So I want to remind you guys, if you want to support your coach, your favorite coach this season, hit exclamation point with that team name so you can get a link to their YouTube channel. So for example, if we were to get exclamation point Roaring Moon, as I type that now in the chat, you'll have the Nightbot being able to grab, oh snap, I just did Hydreigons and Roaring Moon. But you should get the point. You're going to get the link to the YouTube channel. Make sure you guys head on over there, subscribe to your favorite coach, and with that being said, let's get on to it. We have round 2. So like we said, as a snake style, this is what we meant. The very first pick of the second round is going to go to the Columbus Cobalions, and they're going to pick twice in a row, pair off Garchomp with Meow Scarada. So fantastic Pokemon. Having the grass and the dark typing is really cool. This gets access to Protein, which is really nice, being able to be a little bit more offensive against stabs on literally anything. Protein got a little bit more nerfed for those who didn't know. It's only going to change typings once and it has to switch out, come back in as the grass dark typing, and then it can switch typings one more time. Getting access to Spikes, it's really nice as a fast spiker. Having a good end all be all as a physical offensive threat, as well as a good defensive piece, being able to set up hazards for the rest of the team is actually really nice. But this thing having access to Flower Trick, always critting the opponent, is actually really cool. Meowscarada is going to be one of those Pokemon that is going to be really tough to deal with.
Lando T, the king, is back. Really cool Pokemon to pair alongside this Chi-Yu, because those grounders are going to switch in on Landorus, aren't going to appreciate Chi-Yu coming in and clicking a button. And that those bulky waters that Landorus might force in because you want to chip them down, or you want to switch in and take that Earthquake. It's going to be great to chip down so you can click Fire move in the end game. This is going to be Dell's Terra Captain, so now it gains Flying Stab with Terra Blast turning into a Terra Flying Mon. And then Water is just a great defensive typing, as well as takes away most of the weaknesses that a typical Landorus would have, especially that big glaring Ice one and that Water one. Again, it can't Rock Polish and win, but it's still great with the Scarf. It's a great rocker. It can SD and break. It can be physical, special, mixed, a bunch of things. Lando T's versatile, great mon.
Delibird! Iron Bundle comes in. This Pokemon is nuts. This 1-2 punch is kind of crazy. Getting Tornadus plus Iron Bundle, actually kind of nuts. This Pokemon has literally 0 switch-ins. Having access to Freeze Dry as its Ice type stab plus Hydro Pump is unfortunate, having to only be able to click Hydro Pump as your water stab. But nonetheless, the combination of Ice and Water is so hard to deal with. This thing is so freaking fast. I believe it's base 136 speed, basically outspeeding the majority of teams and hitting them so stupid hard. And also having access to Flip Turn. Flip Turn was nerfed heavily, only given it to Palafin and to this Pokemon. Being able to come in, threaten him on, and you bring in your check and he Flip Turns out and gets in another threat? Crazy.
Next up, Goldango. I think an incredible pairing with his Urshifu, especially if Vexus eventually starts picking up those spikes and things like that, which I'm sure he will end up doing, considering he has an Urshifu and Goldango. This Pokemon not only is going to be great at deterring hazard removal, but also it's going to be a great pairing with that Urshifu. You click that U-turn, You get in your Goldango and you click Shadow Ball and make it rain. You can Nasty Plot, you can Focus Blast, Dazzling Gleam, Thunderbolt. Recover is a great option. Even defensively, this thing is really, really good. With that Recover, with that Thunder Wave potentially, it gets screens and you can run a random screen like John did last season all the damn time. So there's definitely a lot of really cool options here with Goldango. And I think it's damn near a perfect pairing with the Urshifu.
Iron Treads, I want to be one of the Dawn fans. So Iron Treads, the Steel and Ground version. This is the Future Paradox Pokemon. Fantastic speed stat. I thought it would be really nice to pair off with Sneasel, having access to that base 120 speed stat, and also giving a big roll compression here. We get Rapid Spin, we get Stealth Rocks, and my Steel type. Me personally, I heavily prioritize the Steel typing and the Fairy typing because there are -1 of them in the draft. Good ones anyway. So I wanted to hop on one of the best, if not the best Steel type that is on there, debatably in my personal opinion. Having access to be a super defensive tank as well as an offensive monster. Access to things like Iron Defense plus Body Press for setup. Very good mon for Volt Switching. I think is really, really great.
Hazards. I really like this pickup here with Amel here, grabbing the blue alongside setting up rocks, setting up spikes, whirlwinding things around as well to, you know, gradually gain that passive chip. And that's going to be a big thing with Spectre in general, is getting passive chip through hazards and through status. And this is going to be a great option for that. It also gives them an incredible ghost resist. We switch into opposing ghost for that Spectre, which it does appreciate, and dark resist, which is really cool as well. Ruination is going to chip things down to half. Again, really whittling things down for Spectre to come in and win the game, which is really cool. And I think this team is starting to kind of form around that spec pretty nicely here, depending on what he ends up getting next.
Galarian Slowking is back and better than freaking ever. This is going to be really nice to pair off with Annihilate. Having access to now a move that can grab momentum, which is something that I really wanted last generation in Sword and Shield. Having access to Chilly Reception and set up the snow is kind of spicy. Maybe John could do something with that, but mostly it's able to come in, soak up a hit with Regenerator, click that button and get out and get in Annihilate. This mon is so tough to deal with. It could be the offensive glue piece, access to Trick Room. It could be super bulky with the poison and the psychic typing. This mon can be so versatile and very difficult to deal with.
Next up, we have Keegan's Terra Captain Volcarona, and again, a really good pickup. Obviously, we can't tear the pult. We get one of the best Terra Captains on the board, in my opinion. Fire and Fairy is definitely interesting. I think Fairy is great. Fire is going to be really cool in those matchups where you can't necessarily win with Quiver Dance Volk, but you can come in with the Specs variant, even a Scarf variant, or even just Boots and click a strong Fire move. Fire Dance getting those boosts, or even just a Terrafire Overheat from Volcarona is going to be incredibly powerful and incredibly strong. So definitely a great pickup here. It's going to find plenty of opportunities to set up those Quiver Dances on those U-turns from Dragon Bolt and hopefully win the game. Also a great Fairy Resist for the Dragon Bolt too, which is going to be, you know, a really clutch aspect of it. So great pickup here in the Volcarona.
Roaring Moon. This Pokemon, if you give it the Terra Captain slot, it's going to be an actual threat, and they did. So we have Gravy picking up Roaring Moon and giving him the Steel and the Flying typing. Flying typing is more on the highlight here, being able to get access to not only Terra Blast for Flying types, but access to Booster Energy Acrobatic Set. Could be really spicy paired off with Dragon Dance. This thing is very fast and very strong. Being able to get that Booster Energy to automatically get that attack boost is actually kind of nice. Steel typing is really nice to be able to get on one of those fairies, so those moves that normally would have been super effective against that dragon and dark typing, which isn't the best defensively but pretty solid offensively, and being able to automatically flip the script and get that steel typing would be really nice. So that's going to be a threat.
Big Skelligurge is picked up next. Now a decent decently cheap because it's not going to be his Terra Captain, but still a really good Pokemon. Having set up the turn in like a way to stop a lot of different setup cheese, especially in a generation where there's Terra and things can kind of set up and get out of hand when they can start changing their typings and getting wonky coverage, things like that. I think having some kind of unaware option is going to be a really big benefit to a lot of teams. It's nice for Kyle here. He's going to be able to burn things with Will-O-Wisp, yawn things, hex things. Torch Song is an incredibly broken move. We were just talking about Fiery Dance. It's Fiery Dance but better, which is pretty crazy because Fiery Dance is already an incredible move. And again, Ghost plus Fire is a great stab combination. You have access to moves like Earth Power as well if you need it, so great mon.
We're gonna jump into the next girl. Ugly gal.
Exactly. Disgusting looking Pokemon. I feel like it's a theme of my draft. Because I drafted Sneasler and WPF, who's also butt-ass ugly. But we have an Aerodus here. And despite its terrible looks, I think this Pokemon's going to be cracked. This is my Terra Captain. I can turn it into a Fairy or a Ground type, which is going to make either those Moonblast really strong, or I get that Earth Power boost and have that become stab, or even a physical Terra Blast option. This thing's offensive coverage is just absolutely insane. I can be physical special mix, Contrary is an option, but I can also set up Calm Minds and try and win the game that way. This thing is so good offensively, and I think with Chen Pao in particular, it's going to be really disgusting. I just have to find means of getting into them with momentum.
Broken Pokemon new toy syndrome strikes again. We have Hisuian Lilligant, which is the very much so better offensive version of the other Lilligant. This thing having access to Hustle and Chlorophyll can actually be kind of spicy. The Chlorophyll aspect paired off with Palafin is kind of interesting, but nonetheless this mon can break other waters for Palafin, which is really nice. Having access to fantastic coverage and also a new move that is able to basically be the opposite of Quiver Dance. So I'm raising up its speed, its attack, and I believe its defense, and so it's able to ensure itself a crazy setup opportunity to literally pick up and win the game. This mon can be really tough to deal with, especially with Palafin being able to win the 3.
Now, I know you've seen Great Tusk Sun before, but have you ever seen Great Tusk Rain before?
Rain?
This is a really, really interesting approach
Wet.
here. But Rain is definitely pretty slept on. There's some big, big threats, especially with a lot of the Pokemon Home Pokemon coming in particular looking at things like Basket Legion. This archetype hasn't been seen much this generation, so I'm excited to see how it goes. Pelipper, it's obviously here to set up the Rain. It was grabbed early to secure said strategy and make sure that it wasn't sniped in case he ended up grabbing like a Basket Legion and it ends up not, getting any Rain alongside it. So I'm going to stand up. Pelipper is going to come in. It's going to U-turn around. It can surf. It lost access to Scald and Defog, which I think are pretty big for it, but great rain setter, obviously. Best rain setter in the format.
Speaking of water types, Mountay just says, I'm just gonna click buttons. That's all I want to do. I want to click buttons. So Urshifu Rapid Strike will indeed be allowed. This Pokemon is incredible, having access to Surging Strikes. This generation paired off with things like the Punching Glove could be kind of nuts to deal with, and we'll see if we're gonna, eat our words in allowing this Pokemon. But it's really, really nice. In the counter team format, it's not gonna be that too intense, but this Pokemon with access to the water and fighting stabbing is really, really nice. Access to pivot momentum and U-turn. This is just Breaker incarnate. This mon is really tough to deal with. It's going to be able to really pressure those ground types that want to come on a Regieleki before it tears.
Next up, we have Slowking, a great, great pairing with this Ursaluna. Not only getting access to Trick Room, but also Chilly Reception, grabbing momentum into the Big Bear is going to be really, really clutch. Also, just a great Spadef pivot here. Regenerate is the best ability in the game, and you can't change my mind, and this is one of the best Pokemon with it. Access to great coverage because it's an early gen mon. Like we said with the Ursaluna, this thing gets elemental coverage out the wazoo, can be very, very annoying. It can Calm Mind a Nasty Plot itself and win games. It can Chilly Reception out, it can spread Thunder Waves, and it has great offensive coverage. Great Spadef pivot. And can check on it. Honestly, with an AV and like max def, this thing checks super effective special attackers, and you can take bundle hits well and a bunch of things. So great Pokemon here.
Exclamation point. Final pick of round 2. We have Heatran. He's back. One of the best steel types in the game, the fire and steel type Pokemon. This is a fantastic Pokemon. Prioritizing the steel type round 2 is I'm a big fan of it. This mon with Flash Fire is really nice to be able to come in on those fire type moves that normally steel types would be very weak to. Access to things like Magma Storm to be able to trap opponents in. Having access to Taunt for stall breaking, being able to it lost Toxic, which is unfortunate, but nonetheless it's still a really good Pokemon to just trap Pokemon in. Having access to Stealth Rock itself, which is really cool, and paired off with Iron Valiant is actually kind of spicy. The one mon that's able to really heavily pressure any steel type that wants to come in on Iron Valiant that is a little bit more lenient on the fighting type stab is really cool. But what are you thinking? Round 2, big exclamation points here.
Again, there's a lot of really cool picks. Obviously, we're still pretty early on in the draft. I think Iron Bundle plus Torn is pretty nuts to be able to get both of those guys. Get the early round 2 bundle is pretty darn insane. I won't lie to you. Other than that, I think that might be the biggest one. I think Goldango is a great pick. There's a lot of very solid picks here. A lot of ones that made a lot of sense. But I think the biggest value in steel is round 2 bundle that Cantera is pretty damn insane. So
yeah, that's
big
huge.
pickup from J-Bay there.
We love the first 4 rounds. First 4 rounds are most exciting. So you're gonna start to see the foundation of all these teams start to come, especially now that round 3 is rolling around. So here we go. Let's get things on and popping. As J Ricky restarts on the timer, is gonna follow up the Heatran pickup with Hydreigon. What do you think about this one?
I'm actually pretty excited to see Terra Hydreigon. It's a Pokemon that's had, in some people's minds, a bit of a fall from grace this generation, losing access to those Nasty Plot bulky Roost sets. aren't as viable, but with Terra, we can change our typing into a poison typing or even get those strong Dracos like J-Ricky is doing. It's going to be very, very scary for a lot of teams to deal with. When it sets up that nasty block, when it pulls up with the choice specs or the choice scarf, it can rocks now this gen, so he has 2 rockers now officially. He really only has 1, but he has 2 rockers officially. Grabs momentum with U-turn and can get into that Iron Valiant, so it can click a button, can get into that Heatran, so it can click a button or get up rocks or something like that. So very, very good Pokemon, very, very solid Pokemon. And I think with Terra, it's going to be allowed to shine just a little bit more, which is really cool.
In the name of a clicking buttons, Hoopa Unbound makes its return to Scarlet and Violet. This mon is an incredible threat. A base 170, I believe, attack or special attack, and 160 of the opposite side is really, really nuts. It's not very fast, and has a not that great of a defensive typing. Offensively is incredible, and this will be the Terra type captain. We have Terra Dark and Terra Steel to be able to come in on those fairy types that I didn't want to deal with before. It removes that 4 times weakness to U-turn with the steel typing is really nice, and paired off with Slowking to get it in for free would be really spicy.
Hisuian, Zoroark, this team seems so annoying already. You have the Zoroark, and then you have annoying Pokemon, and Urshifu, and I might be clicking a move on the, Aleki that I think is an Ice type right now, but then it's not, and then I die to the Zoroark, and I'm sure there's some more annoying things. Hisuian Zoroark was really, really good for Amo last season, and I think the big difference between RVC, Hisuian, and regular is the typing is just so much better. You have so many more immunities. You only have 1 weakness as well, and while you might not be the bulkiest Pokemon in the world, you can take advantage of those illusion shenanigans. You're really strong as well in your own right, and really fast as well, so you can come in and click a button. It's a great speed tier for Mountie to grab as well, so good Pokemon overall.
Here's a mon that really benefits from the rain. We have King Gambit paired off with Pelipper. Ironically enough, is a fantastic duo. King Gambit doesn't want to deal with fighting types. We have Pelipper that can handle them very well. Fire types, we have the rain now. It's really, really nice here. The earthquakes that want to come King Gambit's way, immune to Pelipper. Great pairing. King Gambit is a fantastic steel type and dark type. This mon is incredibly bulky, incredibly offensively threatening. Having access to Sucker Punch for stab priority is really cool. Having access to rocks as a steel type and being this offensive and bulky is really nice. It struggles to keep itself healthy, but nonetheless is still a really potent offensive threat.
Alrighty, next up we have Iron Moth. My boy, I love me some Moth. Being Drewby's Terra Captain here allowed to turn Grass in a Fairy type. It's not the water typing I had last season, but Grass was one I heavily debated. Obviously taking away that ground weakness, then turning into a Fairy type and getting stabbed Dazzling Gleams for those dragons is also very, very beneficial. Fairy definitely would have been my second type if you're allowed to do multiple types last season. This Pokemon is so good offensively, whether it be with Boots variants, whether it be with Booster Energy and its speed, its special attack, it can agility, it has insane coverage between its really, really good dual stab alongside grass coverage and energy ball, Dazzling Gleam, discharge for some reason, nobody knows why, but it does get discharge. You can U-turn, do a ton of things. Now, next up, I end up grabbing Glimmora here. Kind of taking a page out of John's book from last season. Things like Chien-Pao and Amherst really, really appreciate that hazard support. Setting up spikes, setting up rocks, and then just passively setting up T-spikes. If someone decides to click an attack on me, if they want to grab momentum with U-turn and I aggressively go into my Glimmora, that's a free T-spike. And even if you have that grounded poison, I'm going to be able to get one up, and you're going to be forced to play awkwardly and weird around it and things like that. And that's going to be great to chip down those those poisons for my Amherst. It's also really good offensively with crazy coverage, just like that Iron Moth we were just talking about, and access to Rock Polish. So it's a great sweeper in its own right. It can corrosion steel types and poison them. So great Pokemon overall. Love me some Glimmora.
Kyle Lane, the Miami Dolphins, is going to be the first to experiment with Kleavor in the BBR. Kleavor is the bug in rock type. So we'll say the Hisuian evolution of Scyther. Really cool Pokemon. Getting access to Stone Axe plus the new ability Sharpness is actually kind of spicy. Stone Axe is a stab rock type move that does set up the Stealth Rock every single time. So being able to click an offensive stab move boosted by your ability and still being able to get up hazards is kind of nice. Stab U-turns, gets access to Defog, which is really cool. Getting access to Swords Dance for setup, agility to get a little bit faster and really clean up teams. Kleavor's got a big target on its back. I'm curious to see how it does.
Next up, we have Cinderace, one of my all-time favorite Pokemon in Draft League. This is allowed to run Libero, obviously because of the Libero nerfs that we previously talked about. It can come in, U-turns around. I think this is the best Libero or Protean Mon on the board, because typically you're clicking one button, you're clicking Pyro Ball, and then you're U-turning out, which you'll still get the Protean boost because your typing doesn't actually change, or you're coming in, you're clicking a banded high jump kick, you're clicking a banded U-turn, a banded gunk shot, an Iron Head. You're having great momentum. It got access to Will-O-Wisp this generation as well. There's a great tool to chip down those Pokemon that want to switch on you easily, get passive chip on them, and then you turn around and things like that. You can court change, and you can even Swords Dance this generation, so great options for it.
So we have Iron Hands, fantastic Pokemon. I think this mon is busted. The future Paradox Pokemon of Hariyama, the electric and fighting typing is actually nuts. I like it a lot. It doesn't have the craziest offensive, like physically offensive electric type stab. Does get access to Wild Charge, but only base 90 attack is not that great, but it has a sky high attack stat, which is able to make up for it. Fantastic coverage. It gets access to Drain Punch, which is really nice to allow a little bit more of a passive recovery to keep itself healthy, along with Assault Vest sets to be even more bulky. Paired off with Drain Punch, this mon can be really tough to deal with.
We have Walking Wake from John, around 3 Walking Wake. If you remember last season,
yeah,
because it happened right when the season dropped. But Walking Wake was around 1 pick last season, so it's really cool to see it drop so low here. We can kind of see the direction John's going to elect to go with this team, because if you draft Walking Wake, you're probably drafting Sun. And this thing is a menace under said Sun, allowing it to come in and click Sun boosted water moves, which is really difficult. You don't really think about it much until you're prepping for it, and you're like, man, now I have to deal with water moves in the Sun. Like, my Fire Resist and my Dragon Resist can't take that attack. They simply cannot take that attack very well. This thing can either boost in its speed or its special attack with the photosynthesis. It's going to be great with a choice specs and great with a scarf as well. Really strong Pokemon.
Screamtail coming in. We have the pick in from Amol. Screamtail is a staple of Amol's.
This is the most Amomon of all time. Or
I can attest falling victim to a setup Screamtail that I did not expect. When I looked at the matchup, I saw a Screamtail, I saw it's fast, it does no damage, but this thing's set up in my face. Calm Minds, bulk ups, great coverage, access to Wish for longevity, being able to keep the Tinglu healthy is really nice with pairing off on that Wish. The Psychic paired off with the Fairy type stab is really nice to be able to switch in on those fighting types that Tinglu doesn't really want to deal with. Spitcher is a ghost type, but not very defensive, so it doesn't really want to switch on fighting type, so it's a really good fit here. And then now Sylveon. So this is me, like I said before last round, I heavily prioritize the steel and the fairy typing, and if I'm not going to get it in the first, I'll get them in the second and the third. I really wanted to get the best one on the board, in my personal opinion. This here was going to be a Azumarill, and I made this decision last second. I thought it'd be a good pairing to have with Iron Treads to be able to have Wish support to keep it nice and healthy. Also with Baton Pass is really nice to throw up a special hit. This is very specially defensive, and then Iron Treads is very physically defensive, so it was a great defensive synergy. Pixelated boosted hyper voices is nothing to scoff at. Just slap a choice specs on this little guy, and he's gonna be hitting super hard. A really nice Sylveon paired off with the rest of the team here, and the pivot momentum of Baton Pass is huge. And as I thought about it, there it goes.
Yep, Azumarill next up here for Vepsis. Again, grabbing that fairy right here, which is really valuable. I think Azumarill is incredible in this metagame. I think it's actually the best fairy in the format. Personally, just because, especially with our Terra rules, how anti-meta it is and how well it is at checking so many things in the top end. You can still be offensive, you can still be, belly drum, choice band, things like that, but those assault vest sets, those rest talk defensive sets with a Rocky helmet or a leftovers are going to be very incredible. Parasong is a really valuable tool to force things out. Again, if you look at like the 18, 17, 16 point tier, this thing can do something to check every single one of those Pokemon very well.
Yeah, Scizor is coming up here now. Scizor is, who is letting J-Bear do this? This is one of the premier steel types in the format. It did lose Roost, which really sucks for Scizor, but it is a really good offensive and could be still defensive steel type. Having access to Swords Dance plus priority, Technician boosted bullet punches is really cool. Probably the best user of Trailblaze, being able to get that Technician boost and get its speed up to be even more of an offensive threat. Access to Stab U-turn for pivot momentum, Scizor is a fantastic steel type. It's really able to pressure those the grass types that want to come in on some specs Hydro Pump action from the Iron Bundle, so we'll see how that goes.
Next up, Rotom Wash for Delt. Tried and true core of Lando T plus
Orange
Rotom
team.
Wash. Exactly, and Washing Machine here is going to be such a good pairing too with that Chiyu. Again, we kind of talk about with getting U-turns and getting Chiyu free options. Rotom is even more so a Pokemon that does so, because outside of grass is what really switches into the dual stab of water and electric. Nothing really switches into it. So when that grass type comes in and catches that volt switch to the face, Chi-Yu comes in and it clicks overheat and you get a kill. So I really like this pairing a lot. It's also great with the landers, given Dell ice resist for that guy. It also gives him a ground immunity for the Chi-Yu. Great pairing. I love that pick from Dell.
Fantastic spinner. Next Pokemon. Just kidding. We have Quackleval. Really good mon offensively, getting access to Moxie as a hidden ability, paired off with its signature move, Aqua Step, that always raises its speed, and every time you knock out a Pokemon, Moxie will proc and you raise its attack. So automatically by clicking its stab move, it's able to really steamroll teams with the +1 speed boost and its +1 special attack boost, I should say. And then we have double starter point. We have the Fighting Water and the Dark Grass. Great synergy offensively, which is really cool. Access to Rapid Spin, like I said before, but really if you're not careful, this thing can set up and really win the game. Quackleval having really good coverage in things like Brave Bird in close combat, plus Aqua Step. It's got some good stuff. Getting access to Longevity and Roost is really cool. So we got the defensive aspect of a water type, which is nice. It can be run as a physically offensive Pokemon, a sweeper, but can also be bulky. So there's some options here. Got some pivot momentum. Quackleval could be a really big threat if you're not careful. But looking back on the third round, as the pieces slowly start to come together, the biggest thing that stands out to me is they're really prioritizing offense. There's a lot of teams that are going the more defensive synergy route with that first pick, like Amel. We have the Spectrier paired off with Tinglu plus Screamtail, really supporting the first overall pick. And then we have other teams like D.Rey here, just literally grabbing their offensive threats, the best things on the board. But what's the biggest thing that comes out on you in the third round?
Oh man, I think the J-Bear pick was obviously really solid in grabbing that Scizor, but I love the Rotom pairing. I told with Dell, I think that was the perfect Pokemon to fall to him. And a lot of times you're not going to see a Rotom fall to late round 3, so that was a really valuable pickup for Dell. It just facilitates his offense so well. It forms a great defensive core with that Landorus, and especially if you can find ways to keep that healthy, he's going to be in a really good spot. I love that pickup for Dell for sure. I think that's the biggest one.
So I'll go ahead and kick us off. We have round 4. We're going to sneak across. Back after Quackleval, we got Keys. Keys is a great steel type. Speaking of really good steel types, it isn't the end-all be-all steel type, but it does what it needs to do for the team. It is a fantastic typing, one of the best typings, debatably the best typing in the game in Steel and Fairy. Access to the incredible ability Prankster. This Pokemon's able to take advantage of it with things like screens, light screen, reflect, being able to spam thunder waves for speed control. It gets Magnet Rise to be able to ignore those ground type moves if it wants to be more offensive with Prankster boosted Calm Minds, access to Draining Kiss for stab as well as Dazzling Gleam, Flash Cannon stuff. This Pokemon can be really tough and annoying to deal with.
Next up we have Florges from Dell. I'm grabbing that Wish Pass now. But another thing that if you didn't notice before is all these fairy types, all 3.5 of them, they were going in round 3. So Dell probably felt the pressure a little bit, decided to grab Florges just a little bit early to secure it, but I do like the Wish option. Wish plus Baton Pass into things like the Rotom, into things like the Landorus, and even things like the Chi-Yu as those steel types come in to try and pressure the Florges is going to be a really solid aspect of this team. It could be a bit passive offensively, really getting stuffed by opposing steals, but I think that Dell has a team that absolutely massacres those Pokemon, so I think that because of that, this is a great defensive piece for his team. Gives him a great spin-off wall on top of the Intim and the defensive typing of Rotom as well.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make. Sometimes your draft plans go out the door here. This is that time where people are going to start to pivot. You see that the fairy types are starting to go. You got to pick one or else you're going to not have one in the end. And now Zarude comes back from Pokemon Home. We have the Dark and Grass Monkey, very fast, very strong. It still has access to Power Whip. A lot of things did lose it, so it has incredible stab options, but it did lose Darkest Lariat, which is unfortunate. Having access to Trailblaze, though, is really cool to be able to get that stab option to raise its speed, as well as Swords Dance shenanigans, Bulk Up shenanigans, and also Jungle Healing, what it's known for, getting able to refresh itself as a not being threatened by getting burned or paralyzed, things like that. Fantastic offensive piece and could be very defensive as well.
Greninja, I love this pickup for this team.
Fourth round.
Round 4 Greninja is a round 4 Greninja that can run Battle Bond as well, and Battle Bond obviously is not as good as it was previously. Same thing with Protean, but now we're in a stage in Draft League where Power Creep has happened and the nerfs happened, so you can run both of those. You can run Protean, you can get up your spikes, you can get stab on every attack you click, or you can decide, no, Greninja's my win con this week. I'm going to get that Battle Bomb boost, which is a +1 in speed, special attack, and attack, and you'll be able to go to town and potentially win in that way too. Great momentum grabber and U-turn. He even gets weird priority options in like Shadow Sneak. I think it's still gets Sneak. But great coverage, really, really good user of Protean, and great spiker. Love the Pokemon.
Now, this is the mon that got me to skip over Azumarill. There are 2 Pokemon. I'm very grateful I didn't say I wasn't sniped so far. There are 2 Pokemon I really, really wanted. Sneasler and this thing. Hisuian Samura, I think, is going to be absolutely busted. It's the first time we get access to it. So it's kind of flying over people's head at this point when we drafted. So with this coming in with sharpness and getting access to the dark and the water typing, Ceaseless Edge is an incredible signature move, a dark type move base 65 power that gets boosted by sharpness and always sets up 1 layer of spikes, and you can set up to 3 layers. So being able to come in and click your stab move and set up spikes is incredible, and has a bunch of other moves to really take advantage of sharpness. I'm super excited for it.
Galarian Zapdos here for Amel. I think it's really important to have a good, strong fighting type with Spectre, and I think this is one of the best ones to grab for. Because not only is it going to break through those darks and those normals that Spectre doesn't really appreciate, it also grabs great momentum too with U-turn, alongside spikes from the Tinglu and Will-O-Wisp from the Spectre, wishes from, you know, Screamtail to keep the whole glue piece together. This is really scary. I like this team start a lot, and it's a little bit different from what we see Amel. I think round 4 last season, Amel grabbed a Tauros for some reason. So like we've upgraded a little bit. Amel is drafting towards that top end of the board, and keep in mind, bro made playoffs and killed it with 27,000 points left over. Let's see what he does when he drafts like an entire team using all of his resources.
So now Torkoal actually running into 4, kind of nuts. As I tend to agree that Torkoal can really fit on a lot of teams. Torkoal is one of those Pokemon that can really fit on a lot of the top tier threats. Being how there's so many mons of photosynthesis, you can literally stick it on any team and it's be really good. And it being Torkoal itself, being very good offensive as a fire type, and access to Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin being really nice as a utility aspect of it. But being able to pair this off with the boy here was Walking Wake, very, very nuts. He solidifies it very, very early. It's an interesting pairing that now that he has the chilly reception aspect plus the sun, but we'll see how it kind of forms out throughout the rest of the draft.
Next up we have DNC. I love this grab. Really, really low point value. Well, not really. A lower point value mon, but so valuable to grab this early on. Like we said, the fairies are going, and this is a really, really important one to grab. I love this thing. It's very, very bulky defensively. It doesn't have great means of recovery, but it doesn't really matter if you're not dying or taking any damage at all anyways. You can set up spikes. You can set up rocks. Spikes is a big thing this generation. DNC getting spikes is so nice. Chipping things down for Iron Hands, for Volcarona, for Dragapult to come in, do some damage, sets up rocks. It can baton pass around. It can even set up Trick Room for your Iron Hands. It can Calm Mind, Rock Polish, so many things. Great budget fairy.
Mew, 4th round Mew. This is so sad. Mew has really fallen from grace, and it sucks. They really neutered her boy. Mew is gonna be, oh man, with no access to recovery, this Pokemon can still do things that Mew did before, just not as good. The Stallbreaker Mew is kind of dead, but it still got access to all of its setup options like Dragon Dance and Swords Dance and Nasty Plot. So this mon can still really steamroll teams, but it's just not as good. But it does get both hazards. It gets Stealth Rock, it gets Spikes. It's a very good Pokemon in that aspect. It can still support the team really well. It gets good pivot momentum, but Mew is more of a glue piece now versus the centerfold of a team, which is what it was last gen. So I'm curious to see how it really performs after this big change.
Next up, we have Meloetta, another mythical psychic type going up pretty early, but Meloetta is a cool Pokemon to have come back. It's pretty cheap right here. It's a great pivot with an Assault Vest and, getting access to U-turn. You can even run some wonky Relic Song sets and get that strong, normal, and fighting type Meloetta, which I could definitely see Kyle doing. Again, especially with those AV sets, can be really, really threatening and really scary. Normal fighting is a crazy stab combination, but normal psychic is also very good. It gets access to great coverage. It can set up and win. It's great with the Specs and the Scarf as well. It can be a really strong breaker in that regards. So really, really cool Pokemon, and it gives him that ghost immunity, which he didn't have at this point. His team was very, very ghost weak, so I get it. I grabbed Corviknight next. I think Corviknight in round 4 is pretty crazy. I'm not the biggest Corvi guy in the world, but it is objectively like a top 3 steal in the format. And for it to fall so darn late is pretty incredible. And I talked about it earlier when I picked up Enamorus, but I need means of getting in these strong breakers. I need those pivots, those slow bulky mons. They're going to click a slow U-turn, a slow Volt Switch, slow Baton Pass, and get in Enamorus and Shenpao. Corviknight's going to do that. It's also going to function as a defogger. If I'm in a matchup where I can't run Boots Enamorus or Boots Shenpao and I don't want them to take any damage, I have probably the most reliable defogger in the game. Again, I grab momentum. I can set up Iron Defenses and Iron Defense Body Press through teams. Very annoying Pokemon to break overall, though.
Amoongus coming here. It's pretty good for a fourth overall, or fourth round, I should say. Pretty decent Pokemon. It gets, like Owen says, I agree, the best ability in the game, access to Regenerator. It gets Clear Smog. I mean, fucking the Effect Spore. But nonetheless, Regenerator is a throw if you don't run that. This Pokemon's able to come in and soak up hits and do some pretty decent damage, and then get up out. Having access to a stab option with Clear Smog to avoid his opponents setting up in his face is actually kind of snazzy. Amoongus is really good to help facilitate being able to bring in that Palafin, pressure those grass types, and is really able to take care of teams defensively, which is nice.
Next up, we have a Gardevoir. Again, we're grabbing those fairy types early, or the fairy types were going early, so we're grabbing Gardevoir here. Offensive fairy. Now, it might not be as bulky as something like a Scream Tail. It might not facilitate your team defensively very well, but offensively, Scarf sets, Spec sets, and again, we mentioned no fairies in the format. There's also not that many steel types, which means there's not that many fairy resist, and the other fairy resist and poison types aren't going to take those psychics very well. You get access to Mystical Fire and Focus Blast. You can Trick, you can Destiny Bond. You can do so many different things with this Gardevoir. It can be really, really threatening to a ton of teams. So I think round 4 is pretty fair for it.
And there he falls. Iron Leaves goes from round 1 last season to round 4 this season. D-Double firsthand found out that this mod may not be as good, but still is very, still is an offensive threat. With the Psychic and Grass typing being a faster Celebi, it's kind of snazzy, just doesn't have the support the Celebi does. Very physically, offensively potent. Access to things like close combat for Steel types that want to come in on these dual stabs is really nice. Also being able to pressure those Dark types is fantastic. But Iron Leaves is one of those mods that's really helping the team to break down water types, with Regieleki having more of a threat in the end game. So I see what's going on here. I'm picking up what Mountain's putting down, so I'm actually kind of terrified.
Hisui and Arcanine next for Dr. Slacking. I think this is fun. This thing looks absolutely getting those Rockhead boosted, or not Rockhead, Flare Blitz, and Head Smash, and even Double Edge, allowing it to not take recoil from those strong moves, basically making them no drawback at all, which is absolutely insane. You get good priority and extreme speed. You can set up rocks. You can even be intimidated if you really need it to be. This isn't going to function like your normal Arcanines where it has to solid, pure fire typing, be a little bit more defensive. This thing has a pretty crappy defensive typing, but it is going to be so strong offensively. And this team is just Slowking plus 3 ridiculous breakers that nobody's going to be able to switch into.
Hashtag new toys. That's what Dr. Slacking is going for. Slow Bro. Now we have a Slow Bro going off. That was good. I know, pats on back. Slowbro being able to pair off with this team specifically, I think is really good. I think that J-Ricky did fantastic, more so as a good defensive backbone to pair off with Heatran. Whatever Heatran is weak to, Slowbro is able to take care of, and vice versa. And also with Hydreigon in the fray, this thing's going to be really tough to deal with. It did not get chilly reception for whatever reason, even though it is an evolution of the slow line, but I guess this side in the Cantonian form just didn't get it. Access to Trick Room though, which is really nice for an offensive threat. Great coverage being a Gen 1 Pokemon. This thing's gonna be really nice pairing with the offensive threats in the Valiant is really, really cool. But me looking back on this round, honestly, the biggest things that I can see are things that are kind of slipping through the cracks. Mons that have kind of been slept on are now glue pieces. You see some coaches taking the best Pokemon that's on the board, and then some teams that are doing more synergistic stuff in the beginning. We have a lot of players that are just trying to get literally the offensive pieces to overwhelm the opponent, because this is a very offensive meta. But what do you think about round 4?
I think Vex's team is fucking insane. I think the round 4 grind is absolutely wild. On top of the top 3 are Urshi, Goldango, Azumarill. It's really gross. It really doesn't seem like he took any time off, because he's just in full, perfect form right now with that team. It's going to be really, really scary to face off against. I'm not looking forward to it.
And Veps being such a good player. Oh, here we go. Round 5, guys. We have the snake rolling around. We have J-Ricky taking Clodsire. Clodsire is one of those mons that very, very bulky. We see some defensive backbone being formed here. We have Valiant being that fast offensive click button Pokemon alongside Hydreigon that's able to set up and really win a game. And then we have 3 really good pieces that could really take over offensive threats from opponent's side, being the ground and the poison types, and being very much so resistant to fighting types. Having access to Toxic as this bulky of a Pokemon with Recover is actually really annoying. Toxic is very lowly distributed, so having Toxic is really nice as the back pocket. Toxic Spikes and Stealth Rock is actually really nice to set up with this Pokemon. Access to Water Absorb could be kind of snazzy, and Unaware is going to be huge as well.
Gengar, the offense on this team, he said, I have a Slowking. That's it. A great Pokemon. I think Gengar this generation is super slept on. It's so good offensively. There's not that many teams that are going to switch him with the Gengar. Another typing that's very lowly distributed, in my opinion, right now, is going to be those bulky normals. There's really not a lot of them that are very much so like worth what they're being drafted for. And Gengar is a Pokemon that has been taking full advantage of that. I know Kurt, when he had it 2 seasons ago, he absolutely massacred with Gengar. It is such a good Pokemon. It gets access to Nasty Plot as of last gen, and it got T-Spikes this generation, making it a really solid lead with like a Focus Sash, get up those T-Spikes, and especially on a hyper-offensive team like this, it's going to be a great Scarfer. Just ridiculously good Pokemon. I love me some Gengar, man.
We got Cantonian Moltres. Fantastic Pokemon. With heavy duty boots, this Pokemon is obnoxious to deal with. I believe it did still retain Roost, so this thing being an incredible defensive pivot is really nice access to U-turn plus Roost, and also could be very offensive access to Hurricane, Fire Blast, crazy good coverage, and Scorching Sands is really nice. Moltres is one of those Pokemon that on this team is really nice to be able to help really deal with the checks of the first 2 Pokemon. You'll notice that Mountaigne really wanted to invest heavy in those first 2 picks, and being able to pressure those grass types for Urshifu and Alecki is big.
100%. Next up, we have Noivern. Look at the mask. Love to see it. A great Pokemon on Rain. And again,
I didn't notice.
There you go, mascot pick. But yeah, really like the Noivern pick here because it's great on Rain, having goes 100% accurate. But also, great speed tier for a team like this. Getting that naturally high speed tier, not relying on your Rain to be your fast, is going to be really cool for Nate here. It can be great with boots and just U-turning around. It's one of the very few defoggers in the game right now. It's a very good defogger at that. It can taunt, and I believe still Super Fang, which is a really cool aspect of it. But those spec sets are also going to be very scary in the Rain. I'm really excited to see Noivern pop off for the mascot team.
Yeah, Noivern is one of the few Pokemon that didn't lose anything except for Toxic, so it's doing the same things it did before. Garganicle's here. Garganicle on this team, kind of spicy. I love the synergy between that and Namungus, kind of cool. Having access to Salt Cure is nice to really threaten those water and steel type Pokemon. It's very nice. Recover for longevity. This Pokemon can be kind of annoying to break, and not being able to get status is huge for something that's this bulky and able to chew this many hits. Garganicle is very tough to deal with, so it's just one of those mons that if you're not careful, it can set up and get too bulky and you just can't take it down. So very nice picking on that team.
Momentum! Draft League player loves clicking U-turn.
Momentum!
I picked this Slytherin here. Again, I want more momentum. I want more of those, strong Pokemon, that U-turn to get into my strong Pokemon like Pow and Amherst, but that doesn't mean Slitherwing isn't one of the strong Pokemon too. My team, those top 2, they don't necessarily appreciate bulky steals, and Slitherwing eats them up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, allowing you to throw off big close combat. You get great coverage offensively and close combat U-turn first impression, Earthquake, Heavy Slam, Flare Blitz, and Wild Charge, but you're also really good defensively. You're allowed to Morning Sun up. You're allowed to Will-O-Wisp things. You can bulk up and be a setup threat, especially with Booster Energy. I think this pick was perfect for my team. I'm really happy with round 5. So.
Breloom. This mon is under the radar. I think it's really good. I feel like people don't really look at Breloom and think of it as such an offensive threat, but access to close combat this gen really made this thing so freaking good. Before it kind of just pigeonholed itself to one of its priority. It's one of those things that with the Technician boost, you really want to run those low base power moves just to get the big aspect from the ability, but not having access to the really big nuke in close combat I think is great. Loaded dice sets with Bullet Seed is actually kind of spicy. We have Spore here, so now he has that element to get something to fall asleep, get in the Baxcalibur, set up, and really win the game. So Breloom is a nice pairing here.
Next up, we have Toxic, another Pokemon that's kind of fallen from grace a little bit. The gem, which last year kind of like seen a little bit of a decline, but Peck is still really good. It gives this team a nice, really solid pivot. It gives it a really good ice resist as well. You had Cinderace before, but really that was it. The rest of the team really struggled with the ice typing, so getting Pex here is going to be really solid. best ability in the game in regen. It can set up T-spikes, it can toxic things. We still can't scald or knock off, and we lost recover PP, only having up to 8 as a max here. But again, still a great pivot, and I think that's how it's going to function. I think Pegs actually fits a little bit better on more offensive teams like this now, so that it's not sitting in on the field forever. It's pivoting in, taking a hit, and getting something in afterwards, which is nice.
Ironically enough, coming in and out of the BBR fog, we have a Vaporeon. Vaporeon losing Scald is really unfortunate, but with still a base 110 special attack, Vaporeon can still be an offensive threat with still chewing hits with an incredible HP stat, and being able to pass wishes off to this team that right now only has Recovery and Roost on Volcarona as the Terra type captain is really going to be nice. Diancie appreciates Wish, so does Iron Hands, and being able to come in on those ice types for Dragapult is really fantastic. This is a really good pairing. This is a really scary team forming, and I'm kind of terrified. Vaporeon's one of those mons that's really a good glue piece for any kind of offensive pivot, and he's done a fantastic job congesting the synergy of the squad.
Zapdos, one of John's favorite Pokemon. I know he loves himself some really, really good Pokemon. Excited it came back to this generation. Now, I will say, I think it is a bit of an interesting pairing grabbing this on Sun. Now, John's team isn't full Sun, though, so that's something to keep in mind, that Sun isn't always going to be up, and Sun might not come every single week, but Zapdos' main flying stab is going to be kind of predicated on that Sun not being up, Hurricane being nerfed super heavily, but other than that, I mean, this is a great pick. This team really struggles with bulky waters, I feel, and it doesn't have a dedicated Pokemon to massacre them, and that's what Zapdos is going to do. It's going to come in, click Thunderbolt, click U-turn or Volt Switch, it's going to roost up, static, annoying, very, very solid Pokemon. We love us some Zapdos.
Someone called the police and tell them to not come. We have Volcanion. We found where Scald's at. Cheese and rice. Volcanion being the only Pokemon in the game that now has access to the move Scald, but will never run it because it gains access to the signature move Steam Eruption. Fantastic base 110 water type move that's really just so spammable. This mon is so freaking good. I love Volcanion. The fire and the water typing is really nice, having access to water absorb as well. Great coverage moves, things like Sludge Bomb, things like Earth Power. Assault Vest sets are really tough to deal with, and having access to Wish on Screamtail to keep this thing nice and healthy is really spicy. Volcanion is going to be nuts to switch in with that Steam Eruption. And then we have, oh, there's me and Thundurus. So this is where I want to take my Terra Captain. I actually shout out to you, bro, because this was not on my radar. It really, truly wasn't. I was looking at my team. I really like to drop my first 4 really strong picks and get a bunch of roll compression, so that way they can really take care of the vast majority of what I need to do each and every matchup. So I wanted to get the muscle here. So I wanted to get my Terra Captain. I watched one of your videos, and this being having access to the Terra typing is really, really cool. I gave it flying and ice. Having that flying stab on the special side finally is going to be so nice, and it retained agility, it retained nasty plot, and with access to Terra Ice to be able to get rid of, basically giving it perfect coverage with the electro typing is going to be kind of nuts. And I see that Veps has thought the same thing.
Oh, look at that. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You kind of covered it all for Thundy. Now, these Pokemon are going to be slightly different. Thundy is going to be a little bit faster, a little bit less offensive, but it does have more of a mix capability. It has the Prankster ability opposed to Volt Absorb, allowing it to, you know, spread some Thunder Waves. Prankster Taunt is a great aspect of it as well. Again, it lost some pretty tough coverage as well, losing like Superpower, losing Knockoff, that, but still very, very good. I love this flying stab. I love this thing getting ice coverage, making it very, very threatening to deal with, and it feels a perfect speed tier here for Vepsis, bridging the gap between that Urshifu and Greninja. Perfect. Good pickup.
Enamorous. Big question mark. To some, busted. Others, we'll see how it goes. We got some slack by the coaches by picking this Pokemon. It's very, on paper, it's pretty, it's meh. It is meh, but we'll see how it goes. It's got a good synergy here on this team. The flying and the fairy type has been proven to be fantastic by Togekiss. Shout out to one of our mascots. So we'll see if it's able to do a really good job. It does, I believe, get access to recovery, so which is really nice. So it has to run heavy duty boots every single time, but being able to have a good defensive synergy with this team is nice. It can be really nice. It could be really nuts with Iron Defense plus Calm Mind and Draining Kiss and Earth Power. So question mark, TBD.
You got the more ugly one, so it makes my team look better. Next up we have Lycanroc Dusk. Again, a really solid speed tier for Dell here. 110 mon, giving him some more physical offense. Right now he really only has some of the times if you're using it correctly. So getting that strong breaker is great. Getting an offensive rocker alongside Landers is going to be great. Priority is so important in this metagame, in my opinion. Again, that strong Tough Claws boost to the Cell Rock is going to really bail him in a lot of matchups. Just being so strong and picking off those Terra, stat boosted threats. You can Swords Dance. You have Sucker Punch's priority as well. You can even be like the Sash Lead Endeavor stats. Really cool Pokemon.
We have Espathra. Espathra is one of those Pokemon that if you don't get it as your Terra type captain, it's kind of meh. But luckily enough, this is the said Terra captain. From what I understand, I sniped T-Row of Thunder, so I'm very happy I pulled that trigger at that moment. So I ended up pivoting and grabbed the Espathra, having access to the Fairy and the Fighting Terra typing is going to be kind of nice. This Pokemon hasn't in draft really seen much success with the setup variants that you see on the Smogon ladder that got it banned to Ubers, but here it's able to basically spam Lumina Crash, getting that. It's actually pretty busted, that move, and having a follow-up in either Fairy or Fighting type stab is actually kind of nuts. And being able to get the speed boost at the end of each and every turn, this Pokemon can really steamroll your team. So this is a very good Terra type captain. I think it's a lot of offensive power here, paired off with the Light Screen and the Reflect from the Klefki, having access to that Garchomp to get rid of those steel types. I think this is a really good pair. I think this ended up better for him, but what do you think about Espathra more so in the draft league format?
Again, it's very solid if you're a little bit more open-minded with how you're building it, and opposed to going those sword power sets, going those Lumina Crash variants, and at least forcing Covert Cloak. I think a really gross aspect of this team is the amount of spikes he has on it. He didn't leave any for anyone else. Nobody else gets spikes but T-Row, with Klefki and Meowscarada and Garchomp being debatably like top 5 spikers in the format, and him getting all 3 is pretty gross. And hazard support plus Espathra is going to be crazy because the switch-ins aren't running boots, they're running a Covert Cloak, which means they're going to get chipped down regardless of them being able to take that Lumina Crash and not give it death drop. So really scary Pokemon here that T-Row grabbed.
All right, team. So we're going right into round number 6. We will say right at the end of this this round, Owen and I will take a little break so that way we can give ourselves like 5 minutes or so. So at the conclusion of this round, we'll take like a quick little 5-minute intermission. And aside from that, make sure you guys drop the draft again as a reminder. ! Your favorite team to gain that link, and you can follow and support them this season. And if you're not in the Discord server, what are you doing? We are nearing close to, if not over 1,000 people in there. It is an incredible community. Awesome place to intermingle with each one of these coaches and get the content that we'll be running for this season of the BBR. So kind of rolling on in, we have the beginning, we have round 6 over the hump. We're on the home stretch. We have those final pieces. We have 6 mons coming each and every week. 5 mons have been drafted. These are kind of like those little oomph pieces. What are these coaches going to do to kind of cap off their teams before they start to have to fill up those holes? First up, we have the wheel pick. We have Rotom Heat. Fantastic. I love this here, especially with Espathra being able to come in and get rid of those steel types and really help Garchomp to do so. Access to the electric and fighting type stab is really nice. Levitate's fantastic on this Pokemon, being able to come in on those ground types safely and click the move Will-O-Wisp, because primarily those ground types are physically offensive. Great pivot momentum and Volt Switch with stab. It did lose Pain Split, which is unfortunate for the Rotom forms, but nonetheless it still does Rotom things. Access to Thunder Wave for some speed control. Rotom is a fantastic glue piece, and nasty plot sets are nothing to scoff at. It could be a really good breaker, so Rotom is a good glue piece here.
Next up, we have Azelf, one of my personal favorite Pokemon draft. I know not a lot of people use this thing, but I think it's so slow. Again, giving Dale a really important speed tier and having something 115 or higher, but being so good offensively. This thing's coverage is absolutely insane. Whether it be physical, special, or mix, you have 125 in both of your attack stats, 115 speed. You can set up a nasty plot and win that way. It got a new move, Mystical Power, which is basically Torch Song, but for psychic types. I don't think Azelf is going to use as much or Mesprit, but I do think that it's a cool option for it. You can be Scarf, you can be Specs, you can be Bandit. It's one of the few Pokemon that kept Explosion as well this generation, which is a really cool option for it because it can set up rocks and then just boom. It's a great lead. It grabs great momentum, fast taunt. I love it. Great Pokemon.
The past Paradox Pokemon, Sandy Shocks. Fantastic. We had the Stunfisk typing. We have electric and ground, a good speed tier. Fantastic to be able to come in and set up spikes for its team. Having access to Volt Switch for pivot momentum is great. It's another option to be able to pressure those water types for Scizor, and being able to really facilitate getting in those first 2 Pokemon. Iron Bundle plus Tornadus and a bunch of momentum options is actually really nice. And being able to pair this thing off with the Enamorus to be able to be immune to those ground types that are nonetheless be super effective against Sandy Shocks is really cool. So big threat.
Next up, Donphan. Big pickup here. I love this. I think round 6 is actually this thing is skyrocketing with how little good spinners there are, right? It's really the 3 Dawn fans are good spinners, and then everything else is kind of bad. So grabbing this so late is going to be great for Vestus. It gives him his ground type. It gives him Stealth Rock, which is one of the big things he was missing. This is a great final like blue piece to the top 6 that he ended up grabbing right here. He's really killed his budget too, which isn't a bad thing. Top heavy drafts are usually the best ones. So he only has 28 points after this, but securing this solid ground type, the solid spinner, it spreads knockoffs as well. It's going to get up rocks. Great Pokemon.
But
Speaking of great Pokemon,
we got Dunsparce, baby. I am on the move, and I have yet to be sniped this season. I'm very excited to so far get everything that I wanted. This Mon was it was right on top of my list. I had this recently in the BBL. For those who don't know, it is an Uber's Draft League commissioned by Miss Olivia Sama. We love it to death, and also Owen. But this Pokemon literally chewed special attacks from Uber Pokemon, shrugged them off with Roost, and paralyzed them with Glare. This is a fantastic glue piece for my team, being able to come in on those special attacks, and pairing it off with Sylveon is really nice because it's only weak to fighting, being a pure normal type. Access to Stealth Rock to remove that task from Iron Treads. Great piece. I'm super excited I nailed it.
Amo grabs his Terra Captain, and I don't think y'all are ready for Terra G. This thing is so unbelievably scary with Berserk, insane bulk, and his ability to agility and nasty block. It was already a big enough threat on its own last generation. Right, it was already scary enough, but now we're giving this thing poison coverage and steel coverage and changing that defensive typing. This thing is going to be so unbelievably scary in the hands of Amel when he's already, putting so much pressure on you by giving you G-Zap, you turning around, clicking Thunderous Kick in close combat and Brave Bird, Spectrier putting on a ton of pressure, all the hazards from Tinglu, and then you have to deal with this thing right here and that passive chip of that Volcanion getting burns. Amel's gonna have a good time this season. It's terrifying.
Amel enjoys just watching people squirm. He builds walls on his free time. That's gross. Grimmsnarl. He's drafting my core. So we have Grimmsnarl plus Annihilate. I can attest I probably should have tapped into this full potential a little bit sooner last season, being 1 game out of playoffs. This pairing is fantastic. I personally wasn't a fan of Grimmsnarl as a Pokemon, but as a screen setter and a parting shot Pokemon and a dark type, I can't deny this Pokemon is fantastic. Setting up screens for Annihilate is incredible. Being able to chew up more hits and boost up those Rage Fists, and being able to set up parting shot to reduce attack to get other things in. Very nice pairing here.
Big Iron Ju. I love this Pokemon. I think this Pokemon in 108 for this team, kind of slowly bridging the gap between Pult and Volk, because things with this team is there's a big jump in speed and it's pretty slow at the bottom half. So Jugu's going to be great for that. It's a great offensive dark type too, really coming in, clicking buttons. It gives this team a Ghost Resist, and while it's not up Ghost Recovery, we have Vapo passing wishes into this and Deancey. And if you're bringing like a Spadef Jugu, it's going to eat up pretty much every ghost type in the format, especially because you don't have to play Pult, because you have Pult, which is really, really cool. Grabs momentum, has insane coverage, and it can even booster and win games with booster speed, booster special attack. Great Mon. Love me some Juga.
All right, we got some scrambling here, guys. If you start to notice that teams are starting to either continue to spend all of their money, or they're trying to find pieces to help win with their team. We got Serena here. This is one of those Pokemon that's going to provide rapid spin for Jack's team. So Gravy's looking at his team and thinking, I'm a little bit of hazard weak. I'm unable, they can't remove hazards right now, aside from Court Change from Cinderace, but will at that point remove your hazards. It's not going to be the best. So he picks up a rapid spinner here. A little bit subpar compared to what Owen said about the Dawn fan family, but Serena is a fantastic Pokemon to be able to remove hazards, get pivot momentum and U-turn. They neutered it a little bit, but still has really good coverage. High jump kick, dead lost knockoff, but still a really good offensive threat.
Give him a ground resist too. That's really big. He has none of those. Next up though, we have Kyle and his Miami Dolphins picking up Douchbun. Now Douchbun, I'm gonna keep it a stat. It's not the best Pokemon in the world. This thing is 4 points for a reason. But again, we talked about it. There's no fairies left. If you look at the rest of the board, there really wasn't anything left. It was this or like Wigglytuff. So Kyle ended up grabbing the Douchbun here to secure that fairy. It does give him a fire immunity, which is pretty cool considering this team's fire resist for something like Skeledirge, which might not want to take those hits from those fire types. It might have Earth Power or Earthquake or something like that. It'd be very solid physically, defensively. It's not a very good Wish Passer because its HP stat is so low, but it can keep itself healthy with Wish. It can yawn, and immunities are always good, so that's great. Speaking of dipping really low, I dipped really low and I grabbed a Pokemon I'm not the biggest fan of, to be honest. I think it fits really well in this team. And we didn't talk about last round, but last round was the round of the water types. They all went. There was none of them less. And Aloe was the one I felt the most comfortable with on this team. One, because it gives me, again, a great defensive backbone with things like Corvi and Slither and the things I'm going to get later. It can push those things up. It can Baton Pass, though. And that's the thing I love the most about it, is that regen plus Baton Pass into my Slitherwing, Enamorus, and Chien Pao. And I think that's going to be a really cool aspect of it. It's a really cheap water type as well, so I save a lot of budget because I was kind of going crazy on the spending there. So I really wanted to grab that, you know, bulky, slow water type to get in my thread. So we end up grabbing Aloe.
G Slow Bro, I think it's still fantastic. Galarian Slow King is gone. Galarian Slow Bro is not as good, but still pretty spicy. Sorry guys, Quick Claw is banned. So there's no Quick Claw plus Quick Draw shenanigans.
It's not fucking happening
44%
here,
priority. It ain't happening here. And I know that Owen is fuming at the mouth just hearing that out loud, but nonetheless, it is indeed banned. This Pokemon is still technically from Gen 1, even though it is a Galarian form, so it gets incredible coverage and the best ability. We say it all the time. It's the best ability in the game. Regenerator is really nice. It's offensive. It comes in, gets its health back for free. Great Pokemon.
Next up, we have Nate here grabbing the Basket Legion female. So we see the first like dedicated rain abuser on this team. Basket Legion female, it is not allowed to use Last Respect. Should kind of mention that. The move itself, Last Respect, is banned this season of the PBR. Nothing can use it. So keep that in mind when you see 11-point Basket Legion. Don't yell at me, okay? This is going to be the more specially oriented one. It's a little bit better of a mixed attacker, actually, in general. Its attack is still a little bit higher, but has a much more usable special attack. It can throw off big, strong, rain-boosted wave crashes and hydro pumps. It gets Ice Beam and Shadow Ball. Really lacks in the physical stab option for Ghost, so I think that makes it a little bit more versatile than something like a Basket Legion male without Last Respect. So cool.
Like deceivingly fast, so it's a fantastic Pokemon in regards to being able to come in and just soak up hits and deal damage, set up Stealth Rock, knock things off. Great Pokemon in my personal opinion. Fantastic normal and flying type access to Reckless to boost Double Edge, Brave Bird, and access to close combats for steals is a fantastic mon. This mon's really able to come in and just break teams. I'm sorry I'm distracted because my internet's like bugging in and out, but we just slowly coming back. Boom. But yeah, Strapped is a fantastic mon to just break, and I think it's really, really great here. Rillaboom coming up next to kind of cap things off. Everything kind of slows down here at the moment, which is actually really cool. I'll talk about Rillaboom for here just in a second as we slowly start to get ourselves nice and fantastic. So Rillaboom is one of those mons that can really fly under the radar, especially at 10 points. So back, and then we'll go share screen. But thanks guys for your patience, really appreciate it. Sometimes with all this stuff going all at the same time, connection goes kind of crazy, but hopefully I should be getting
Alright.
Well, there we go.
There we go. Okay, I was gonna say, I hope it's not the internet
there's
again,
no,
'cause you were
there's no
talking
technical
full speed
difficulties
for me and I
moving
couldn't
forward.
hear
And then
any
you
of it.
realized, like you said, not yet, and there it is. Thanks. I muted the mic before I walked there. I forgot to unmute it.
There we go.
But basically, the thing cut out because my sister came over and she started watching a streaming TV on our big ass television in the living room, so the bandwidth was stretched out. So I kicked her out. So now we have we're back online. Thank you guys so much for your patience. Ironically enough, it happened right on our break, which is great.
Perfect
So now
timing, yeah.
we're refreshed. We're ready. Let's get it going. We finished round 6. Now the teams statistically have been filled, right? But you can pick up to 9 to 11 Pokemon. So now we're gonna start to see those holes that some teams that they think are there start to get filled by some roll compressors, right? So I'm curious to see how things go. Maybe teams will start to figure out, maybe I'm real weak to this typing, so then we'll get some resistances, maybe some hazards, some hazard removal, some clerics, things like that. So this is gonna be the cherries on top. So very excited to see how this goes. As Owen said, a lot of the water types have gone, a lot of the fairy types have gone, a lot of the steel types have gone, so we're gonna see some bargain shopping going on with some of the teams. So with that being said, I'll let you take the first one, brother. We're gonna go on to round number 7. We have Kilowattrel. What do you think?
John's boy right here honestly proved to be a much better Pokemon than most people were anticipating last season. John used it really, really well. I think it's a good fit on here on J-Ricky's team. Gives him another ground immunity outside of the Hydreigon, which is pretty cool. Gives him a really solid speed tier, and I believe it's 121, something really high, I believe. Let's see, Kilowattrel. It is going to be 125, so incredibly fast. The electric flying stab combination is incredible. Gives him another electric immunity, as well as having competitive to, just for the hazard removal, and can be really strong in that regard. This is going to be a great fast pivot, good defensive typing, good offensive typing. So great pickup for J-Ricky here for sure. Definitely like this
And
one.
we got Fortress. Fortress is some, not that great, to others fantastic. It's a great roll compressing Pokemon, just like we just finished talking about. We got a good steel type with a great typing and bug to pair it off, making it only weak to fire. 4 times weak to fire, but you're not going to stand on a fire type anyway. Access to Volt Switch for some pivot momentum, and in this meta, it's really, really nice. Being able to check things like Chin Pow is really cool. Access to both hazards, actually all 3 hazards, Toxic Spikes, and Stealth Rock, and Rapid Spin. So it has everything all built in one. You got his steel type, you got his hazard control, all in one Pokemon, and this has an incredible sky high physical defense paired off with body press as a buff this gen. Good steel type.
Assuming Braviary is a pretty interesting pickup from Mounty here. I think we actually have every single Pokemon in his new logo for the season. So you always know 3 Mounted picks going in. So we have Assuming Braviary right here. It can honestly be a really cool Pokemon with Tinted Lens plus its pretty cool stab combination of Psychic and Flying. You're gonna be hitting things very, very hard. Esper Wing is a really cool ability, guaranteed boosting speed, which is kind of this Pokemon's downside, but it can also run out with those Sheer Force sets and really, really break through some teams with some great coverage. It also gets access to Heat Wave, which is a good option. It can Calm Mind, it can Agility. It can do a lot of scary stuff. It can U-turn around as well, and it's a defogger, and that's always great.
Hisuian Electrode. Big question mark. On paper, pretty cool Pokemon. It got all the things that Cantonian Electrode really truly wanted, including the grass typing. This Pokemon is very fast at base 150 speed, identical stats as the Cantonian counterpart, but Hisuian Electrode is one of those mons that now no longer gets walled by ground types, having that stab, Energy Ball, Giga Drain, Leaf Storm, and it's a move that's similar. Can you remind me of the move that cuts off half of his HP? Chloroblast. So a big nuke to water types is basically it's able to come in and really take full advantage of that rain, which is really, really nice, and break down those ground types to break down those electric types to be able to switch in on those mons. Very nice.
Next up, we have Mousehold, and you probably gave the wrong guy to talk about Mousehold. I'm a big Mousehold hater. Yeah. I don't like Pokemon that can quite simply attack and then die immediately. I was playing a game one time against J-Bear where I had a King Gambit and I put a helmet on it, and I took 7 hits, took about 20%, and the Mousehold died. But it does force very specific prep. It's also very good hazard removal. That is the one thing I think is really cool. It's like hazard removal that can't be stopped no matter what. Even if you have a Goldango, you're using Tidy Up on yourself and getting rid of those hazards. That's a really cool aspect of it, which allows it to boost up. Technician, Population Bombs, Bites, and low kicks and things like that can be very solid as well. So decent Pokemon. I'm not the biggest fan. Good speed tier too, though. Next up, we have me. I got Mudsdale. There was not many ground types left available. An incredibly important role, especially when you have things like a Corviknight, Aloe, and Alola. So I really actually love this defensive core so far of Corvi, Aloe, and Mudsdale. Aloe gets to Wish Pass into that Mudsdale constantly as well, which is really cool. And those grass types would be both Aloe and Mudsdale are going to be walled by Corvi, which is, again, a really cool aspect of this team so far. It gives me rocks as well, so I have 2 rockers, not just Frank Lamore, taking a little bit of pressure off of it. It can roar things around. Stamina is a great ability in conjunction with Body Press, and this plus my next pick is going to form like a really, really solid defensive core. Really happy with it.
Hisuian Goodra, one Pokemon that was really on my radar at the very beginning of this draft. It's one of those Pokemon that, with the new typing and Steel adding on to the previous Goodra, is actually really, really nice. Now from here, it doesn't really give you much as a Steel type, doesn't give you hazards in that sense, but being able to add the Steel type to the Dragon typing makes Goodra overall a little bit better. It traded off some speed for a lot of bulk, which is really cool. It still has access to Curse, which is really cool in that aspect, as well as Body Press. So rest sets would be really prominent. It's still a really good, especially offensive Pokemon. Now it has stab options to take care of those fairies that really threatened it in the past. So really cool Pokemon on paper. Let's see if it pans out.
Next up, we have Hatterene. Jack's grabbing his Fairy type right here, and as he mentioned before, he was a little bit weak to hazards to grab the Serena, but this is another Pokemon that really deters hazards against his team. He has the Port Change from Cinderace, which can kind of flip the other way. We have the Spin Serena, and then we have Magic Bounce from Hatterene. So, like, he has a lot of pseudo hazard removal on top of the Spin, which is pretty darn cool. Good Fairy as well. I wish he had a way of keeping it healthy with some Wish and things like that, but it can also Trick Room up and be scary offensively with a Trick Room. It can also run those eject button sets, which are going to come in, take that hit, eject button out, and get into Landorus, get into Roaring Moon, get into Cinderace, and click a button, which is going to be a really, really cool aspect of it. Great with an AV too, so good Pokemon for sure.
We got the second Lake Spirit heading off the board. We got GlitchhxCity coming in. Fantastic, bulky, psychic type Pokemon with an incredible ability to pair off with this defensive aspect to it and Levitate. Being able to come in on ground types for really free and having access to U-turn for pivot momentum to get in the rest of his threats. If you look at this team, this is really gross. This is a fantastic mon to come in and on those fighting types and on those ground types. He's a little bit ground weak. You really want Jugulis taking in and going in on those Pokemon. You want to come in nice and clean. But this Pokemon really did what it did before. It is very fat, very supportive. It lost access to Toxic, which is unfortunate for it, but it still does what Uxie does best. Not having knockoff is also big, but again, it's still an Uxie.
Next up, we have Bronzong here. Speaking of, you know, a great Pokemon that went really, really late, it's going to be Bronzong. This thing's a great rocker on this team. Great ground movement. Taking a little bit of pressure off that Zapdos, because right now he doesn't have a traditional ground resistance. Zapdos is weak to those stone edges and rock slides that are going to come out from most ground types, which is really, really cool. So a little bit more of a reliable ground answer, in my opinion. It did lose access to things like Toxic, which Bronzong always loved having in its arsenal, but it's still very solid. It can Body Press, it can Future Sight and force weird damage and positioning on Pokemon. It can Iron Defense, Body Press, or it can even Calm Mind. And while it can be a little bit passive, it's very good at switching in on what it needs to switch into.
So now, Glassdoor, I was checking on Discord. So Glassdoor is here. We have Ice Horse. So we have now Spectrier and Glassdoor on the same team. Amel doing Amel things, man. Nonetheless, Glassdoor is still a great Pokemon. It did lose access to high horsepower, which is one fact that I think that kind of went over people's head. So it's kind of rough dealing with other steel types and other ice types. But nonetheless, Glassdoor is still a great Pokemon with access to really good stab options, and also close combat is really nice. Body Press is pretty cool. A setup with Swords Dance. If you can get a Trick Room up, that would be really cool with Scream Tail. Glassdoor plus Horse. We got the Horse team. It's just Amel, guys. It's just Amel. And now we have Decidueye. I am on a quest to get everything that I wanted. I'm very happy to get Decidueye. Decidueye paired off with Hisuian Samurai. I thought he was actually fantastic. My main mode in this team is to set up hazards with Samurai with that spike aspect. We have a lot of stealth rock. We have toxic spikes with Sneasler. So I wanted to get a ghost type to get a rapid spin blocker and also still provide really good aspect and utility to the team, as well as an offensive threat. It retained Nasty Plot, it retained Sword Stance, gets access to a really good stab option, Spirit Break, gets access to Roost for longevity, and Devog in case I do need it, but this is going to be a really good Pokemon to be a good aspect pivot and offensive threat.
Next up, Vepsis grabs Dragology. 7 point Dragology, really solid pickup for him, giving him a grounded poison, as a lot of things this team don't appreciate being poisoned. Giving him, honestly, while not being a fairy resist, another switch into fairies, which is always a good thing. It gives him a ton of really solid resistances in that dragon and poison typing. And not only is it really good defensively with like an assault vest or even being physically offensive and running the black sludge, but also offensively, this thing does not have much switches. Adaptability, dragon, and poison is so strong. They have focus blast to hit those steel types, making this thing have basically perfect coverage and making it incredibly tough to switch into and tough to kill in one hit too. So usually can trade 1 for 1.
Sorry, J-Bear, you got to pick up something a little bit more expensive. We have Glade, and Glade's showing up with a little bit higher now, from 7 points to 11 points. Shout out to us. We kind of disrespected his sharpness at the beginning of this gen.
Okay, no. The first time. Last season was supposed to be higher. Let's not, Daniel.
So now Glade's at the word supposed to be at 11 points. Boosted with sharpness, we have... This thing's an incredible threat. It has a lot of coverage to take advantage of its ability, being able to get its stab boosted, sacred sword, stab boosted, psycho cuts, Greymon, great coverage, leaf blade, agility for setup sweeping potential. Fantastic offensive pivot. Offensive threat.
I get to talk about my boy, Big Immense right here. I love this thing to death. Now you typically think that, man, Immense plus Landers is pretty weird, but he can Terra his Landers, so it really doesn't have those same weaknesses that it would with Immense otherwise, especially with the Terra Water. I love this thing as a setup win con potential. There really wasn't much of that on this team outside of maybe Lycanroc, and especially nothing that really like boosted its speed to win the game. And I like Salamence for that. I also love its defensive application. I love the Intim core of Terra Water Landers plus the Salamence really neutering a lot of physical attackers. This thing is strong. It can be physical, special, bulky. It can run with mix sets. Moxie is a great ability. Intim's a great ability. Just such a good Pokemon. We love that mod to death.
So here it is. Here's my first snipe. I actually really wanted Mesprit coming back here, and I planned for it. And a fun story, this pick took forever to come on in, and I was so devastated. So it's just really sad. We'll call it poetic justice that I have to talk about it. Mesprit is the last of the 3 Lake Spirits to get picked up. I personally fancy this one out of all of them because of just the versatility of its stat distribution. It's the slowest of the 3, but it's also the more well-rounded of the 3. Base 105 in every stat except for HP and speed at 80 is really cool. It lost knockoff as the other Lake Spirits did, but still retained basically all the rest of its coverage. It's got fantastic of that. Physically offensive colorful moves, especially offensive colorful moves, pivot momentum and U-turn, availability to levitate, great Pokemon, setup opportunities. This Pokemon can really be the end-all be-all, almost like a discount version of what now is Mew. So I really wanted to hear, but it's a great glue piece here for this team. I think Mesprit fits well on this squad, but what do you think about the picks on the 6 overall in this round so far?
Again, we're starting to see those things kind of fill out. Love the Mesprit pick, like you said. It's a great Pokemon overall. But we're starting to see, again, some great value get picked up on a lot of these squads. I love me some Dragology. Glade is an incredible breaker that J-Bear ended up grabbing early. And we even see some later round like big hitters like Mence going in round number 7 is pretty darn crazy. It usually ends up going earlier, not going at all. So that's cool. And of course, we got to shout out Amel with having 2 of the Galarian birds and both of the Spectrier and like Glastrier. He is drafting the Crown Tundra DLC right now. I hope you got. He is so excited for the next DLC. He drafted the last one. So we'll see if he ends up finishing off the core, because I thought that was absolutely hilarious watching this team.
Amel doing Amel things. You know what's funny is that he also has birds. So birds is the thing. So now going off onto round number 8. So kind of wheeling back around, we have Bear. Fantastic normal type Pokemon. Now that this thing can hold an Eviolite and access to Guts, this Pokemon can be very much so overwhelming. Very bulky Pokemon, can really soak up special attacks like with ease, with Guts not being able to worry about having those drops in attack. In fact, actually increasing its attack power is really, really clutch, and having access to Facade, Earthquake for those steel types, close combat for an alternative is really nice. This Mon with rest, sleep talk shenanigans is going to be really tough to deal with, and it really does help out this team with offensive ghost types, which otherwise didn't really help too much because the dark type was Meowscarada. So Ursaring is a great fit here.
Next up is Camparaja for Dell, a really good budget steel type. I know it lost some things, I know it lost Crash and Power, which were big coverage options for it to lose. But I still think for its price point at 7 points, you're getting a lot of value out of this thing, especially with the Wish Pass from the Forges, especially having the Rotom as a defensive pairing as well. This thing can be really good. It's a great rocker. It can whirlwind things around. It can be solid with an Assault Vest. It can be pretty scary offensively with Sheer Force or even Heavy Metal just for your Heavy Slam. You can be really threatening. Having access to Steel, Ground, and Rock coverage is always going to go pretty much unresisted on most teams. So again, for 7 points, and all this Pokemon gets a lot of crap, but it's really not that bad considering the Steel type pool that we have in Generation 9.
This is depressing. Espresso Depresso. Fun fact, I drafted Blissey last season because I thought it had Heal Bell. Come to find out, when I put it on my team and I tried to build with it, it was not released yet. So J-Bear is in here swooping up my Blissey for the purpose that I had it last season, and now it has the only cleric in the game. Chansey and Blissey are the only ones with access to Heal Bell this generation, which is really nice for the team, being able to keep his team very healthy. Scizor doesn't like burns. Paralysis on the top 2 Pokemon are not very fun. Toxic on the Enamorus is also not fun, so Cleric is really cool. It's a little bit passive, I will admit, but it is very fat. Good bulky Pokemon for this team.
Next up, we have Chestnut. I like this pick a lot. Again, now we have another spiker. We have a ground resist, a traditional ground resist. That's something like Donphan or Azumarill that can actually take those hits. And you have ways of pressuring them, but now he has a way of switching into them, which I think is very clutch and a really cool aspect of this team. Finally, it can also do a lot of things like, you know, set up a belly drum and trailblazing with the game. It can now Iron Defense and Body Press with that nasty defense stat, as well as Leech Seed plus Spiky Shield is a better version of Protect. Very solid Pokemon for 10 points. It does a lot of things for a team, and it really supports this team well, giving him some, budget spikes and a very solid ground resistance switching. So I like this pickup for bets this year a lot.
We got Talonflame. This is my pivot for Mesprit, and I think overall, kind of taking a step back, I'm very happy with it. I haven't had a chance to use Talonflame. I've always watched it on the outside looking in. Very versatile Pokemon. It can set up. It's got access to Gale Wings, which gives it priority to any one of its flying type stabs. It did lose dual wing beat, which is unfortunate, but being able to just come in with heavy duty boost, which most likely 99.9% of the time is going to run anyway, and gaining access to a stab Brave Bird to really help me out in a pinch would be really cool. Flame Body is also kind of snazzy, being able to come in and on those fighting type attackers and get that 30% chance to burn is awesome. Got another Defogger, which is cool. We have U-Turn, we have Roost. Great Mon.
Cyclozar next up. J-Bear himself was picked up by Amel here. I'm giving him some really solid hazard control right now, or not really solid, giving him some kind of hazard control, because right now he had spikes in his Tinglu and rocks in his Tinglu. One, he doesn't have any other hazard mons, so that's something to keep in mind. Lots of pressure on the Tinglu, but also giving him some rapid spin to get rid of them, so that he isn't forced to, potentially draft the Defogger and defog them away, which is a really cool aspect. It spreads knockoffs, has the best ability in the game, which makes it okay. You can knock off, you can do your turn, and if anybody is going to make Shift Gear Cyclozar work with like a Life Orb, it is going to be Amel. This is also the first legendary or Paradox Pokemon that he's drafted, so it's pretty interesting for sure.
So now we have Quag or Quagsire. So comfort pick. I know that John likes Quagsire a lot. Did get a big buff. Sounds like not a lot, but it is a lot. They gave us Spikes and Stealth Rock. Being able to have the water and ground typing with Water Absorb and Unaware is very clutch. Unaware in most cases could be the difference between winning and losing the game. So if you have a setup mon that John kind of played a little bit recklessly around, it can bring in Quag, ignore all of those boosts, and kind of wear it down. I believe Quagsire still retained Toxic, if I remember correctly, which is big on this Pokemon with recovery. Being able to come in, Toxic that setup threat, and really not care about those boosts.
Big low kicks. I'm excited to see this Pokemon do something, man. It's such a cool Pokemon design-wise. It is very strong with the tinted lens. Again, giving plenty of U-turn momentum as well. And those fairy types that want to come in and they want to take that dark or that bug type hit, they're just getting chipped down for your Bolt to come in and click Draco later. They're just getting chipped down for your double dark core of Jugalist to come in and win the game later. They're getting chipped down for your Iron Hands that wants to come in and click a fighting move later. So really, really solid Pokemon. I love the momentum and I love the priority. Like I said, I think priority is very important this gen with all the scary Mickey setup that there is. So definitely really cool Pokemon here for Keegan.
Yeah, may miss out on the Terra type captain shenanigans of it, but nonetheless is still with tinted lens very good. Now we got the Tauroses coming. First of all, we got the Paldean Tauros Aqua Water Bull. As we've learned from our mistakes from the first season of this generation, which would have been season 4, we had them all bundled up, now we separated them, so this is the first one to come off the board. The water fighting type Tauros with base 100 speed, access to Intimidate, Wave Crash as a physical water type stab, fantastic priority in Aqua Jet, top tier. Good Pokemon, could be a defensive water type, could be an offensive threat. We've seen it in Keldeo in the past. This is that discounted, not as good as Keldeo, but can still kind of fill the same role. Great Mon.
Next up we have Kyle grabbing Quillfish. I actually really like this pick for his team. 1, it gives him a ground of poison, which is really nice. Always a good thing to have, right? 2, it gives him spikes. And Pokemon like Baxcalibur, Cleavor, Breloom, Skeledurs especially love having those spikes up, chipping them down, putting them in range of, their attacks and things like that. So I really like that aspect. This thing with an Eviolite is incredibly bulky. Poison Dark is an incredible defensive typing. And again, it can also throw off those big bar barrages and get poisons on things. You can throw off Toxics and get poisons on things. So it's going to be great. It's spreading passive damage for Pokemon like Baxcalibur and Hex Skeledurs to come in and hopefully do some damage and really start whittling some teams down. Next up, I grab Goodra. I think this is such a good pairing with this team, man. My team was very physically defensive right now, like on the bulk side. Things like Mudsdale, things like Aloe are a little bit more physical. Corvi can be Spadef, but with the team that I have right now and it being like my main ground check right now, it's going to be more Fizdef a lot of the time. So getting that Spadef, Sponge, and Goodra for 10 points is going to be so clutch, especially considering I have the Aloe to pass the fattest of wishes into it. Those electric and grass type attacks, I don't have to go into Mudsdale anymore. I just go into Goodra, I take 2.5% and I wish up the full, which is awesome. But not only that, I don't have to just run AV sets. I can run Specs, Scarf, Banded, Life Orb, Extra Belt. I can run Acid Armor, Body Press. Awesome Mon. I'm really excited to try it.
And now we have Dragonite, how the mighty have fallen. Dragonite not being able to have a Terra type is unfortunate, but nonetheless, Dragonite is still Dragonite. It still does what Dragonite did prior. Yes, it cannot Terra normal, it can't Terra Dragon, it can't be that free Terra monster that we've seen completely tear apart the draft league scene. But nonetheless, like I said, Dragonite still does Dragonite things. Access to Extreme Speed, Dragon Dance, Multi-Scale is fantastic with heavy duty boots. It can set up and really run away with teams. It's a Gen 1 Pokemon with Gen 1 coverage. Great Pokemon, great breaker, great setup sweeper. Access to Roost for longevity is actually really nice for it. So it can be a defensive pivot. Still a Dragonite, so not as good, but great Mon.
Big Dreadnought. We're seeing those rain threats pile in. We have more untraditional, not bona fide range, abusers and things like Noivern and Electro Hisui, but we're also seeing the Basket Legion and the Dreadnought giving that physical rain option to this team, which is really, really cool. This thing not only functions well in the rain, but outside of rain, having access to Shell Smash this generation makes it a big threat outside of the rain on its own. And in the rain, you should have the Shell Smash and you're throwing off Liquidations and Stone Edges and even Ed Smashes if you're feeling a little crazy. This Pokemon quite simply has no answers, so it's going to be really exciting. I'm really excited to see this thing pop off in the rain.
I like when I was saying to myself on my front office that was helping me out to do the draft, because I love drafting on my own, and then once I get towards the tail end, I get the things that I want synergistic wise, and filling up holes, I always like to take opinions. And I was like, damn, I really want Regidrago. And I have no idea. I'm gonna watch Mounte's draft breakdown why he grabbed this Pokemon. He said, I want Reggie, I want my thumbnails, and that's it. And I was like, dang, this thing's gonna fall to me, and there it goes. Regidrago goes, and I'm so sad. Fantastic Pokemon. Its ability, Dragon's Maw, did not get nerfed just like how Regieleki's does, so it is a band boost to the Dragon type moves, and now it gains access to ground coverage, Earthquake, and Earth Power. Oi, and as I'll let you pass it. You know what? Nah, dog. I'll take over here. I know what's gonna happen, so I'm just gonna take over. This Mon is broken. I don't care what anybody says. Mimikyu is a fantastic ghost type Pokemon that just so happens to have the fairy typing. If you draft it as your fairy, you're doing it wrong. This is a fantastic Pokemon to basically, it's an emergency button. You're about to, you need to get a reverse sweep, Mimikyu will do it for you. You get enough chip and you get enough support, you get rid of those steel types, Mimikyu will win the game for you. One Swords Dance plus a Life Orb is all it needs for its perfect coverage in fairy and ghost, and good priority in Shadow Sneak. Set up a Swords Dance, get that chip, and then all of a sudden Mimikyu runs away with the game. Great Pokemon.
Next up, we have T-Tar. I like T-Tar pick here because, one, your Hydreigon is going to be your Terra Captain, so it's going to be changing its typing, and two, it's not the most reliable ghost in the world, so getting something like T-Tar to be that solid ghost is just to give you another rocker as well, because right now we just had Claw and Heatran, so more hazards are always a good thing. They're never going to be a bad thing. Really, really versatile Pokemon. Can either be fat and defensive, it can be specially defensive with an AV, it can be physical and special, you can set up with a Rock Polish, you can set up with a Dragon Dance, or it can just be Choice Band and kill something. I love T-Tar. I think it's still such a good Pokemon, and I actually really like it on this team a lot. Whether it be as that breaker, that AV sponge, or as that just reliable stealth rocker.
Yeah, dude. So T-Tar is fantastic. I like T-Tar a lot. And then being able to cap this off in round number 8, we're like slowly starting to see how like some teams are starting to either say, fuck it, I'm gonna get the best Pokemon that's on the board and get rid of the rest of my points because I've got everything that I want, so I can just go ahead and just pick whatever's best. T-Tar being a little bit more expensive and being able to fit on this team is actually really nice for him in round 8. It dropped to him, so he's able to spend a little bit more. So I'm curious to see how he spends those very smidge. He has 15 points left. He only has 8 Pokemon. He only technically needs one more to fill it out, but then again, he has a lot of holes on his team. So we'll see how he's gonna able to pass that through. But what's the biggest Pokemon in your brain that came out of round number 8 that was the biggest surprise?
I love me some T-Tar. I think the Chestnut pickup was also very Dragonite, I know you kind of touched on it being like, you know, not as good right now as if it could Terra, but like, it's still such a good Pokemon, man. People really sleep on Dragonite, and last gen they did the same thing. It's still so good. It's slightly worse than it was last gen with no dual wing beat and no Terra, but it's still so good offensively, defensively. Multi-skill is such a good ability. It can roost, it can be fat and defensive, physical special, man. Such a good Pokemon. I love D-Knight, man, whether it be Terra or not Terra, so I think that was a cool pickup for Juby. Nice little glue piece in win con for him.
All right, team, so we're going into round number 9. We're getting on the last 3 rounds. Actually, theoretically, for some of these teams, we have only 2 picks. Not everyone picked up 11 Pokemon. So now we're running into round 9. We have all of those scramble pieces. So I'm personally excited to see how they cap things off. Rounding things out at the beginning of number 9, we have the second Tauros. First Tauros goes, this is what I'm talking about. They're like, oh dang, I could probably guarantee you that J-Ricky was not thinking about this Pokemon. And when Tauros came through, it's like, oh dang, I think that the other Tauros would really fit well on my team. And it does. This is the fire and fighting type version of it. It has great defensive backbone to it. It's got Will-O-Wisp, be able to burn those offensive threats. Access to body press is really nice on the physical side, and stab options is cool. Getting access to Raging Bull as a fire offensive type, fire offensive attack instead of Flare Blitz to not get that recoil is actually kind of spicy. I like Tauros Paldea a lot. Both of them, the water and the fire, are really nice. This is a good being able to switch in and on those steel types. Fantastic Tauros.
Next up, we have Magnezone here for Dr. Slacking. I know this is a Pokemon he absolutely loves to use. I remember back in Gen 8, I feel like he drafted a ton, or at least when I was watching this stuff in that league or whatever it might have been. But it gives him a steel type, another steel type, which is a bit interesting. I feel like he grabbed this for the steel trapping capabilities. I don't know how I feel about it, just because the fact that there's not that many of them that Mag really traps, and this isn't a team that really like you go, oh no, my steel type has to run Shed Shell. Like, I don't know, when I'm running my Corvi in this matchup, I'm not too worried about running a Shed Shell instead of something else, and there's not any knockoff pressure because knockoff is very lowly distributed. So I get that aspect of it. It also helps with waters, which he struggles with, but yeah, definitely an interesting Pokemon for sure.
Doug Trio. I love this. This is nice. I don't like Mountay right now. We'll get a friendship timeout for the Regidrago, but nonetheless, I can't deny that Doug Trio is fantastic here. Being able to come in and trap the threats that both Regis do not want to deal with, coming in with the Arena Trap ability that is indeed legal for those who were going to have that question. You can run Arena Trap, and being able to trap in those ground types and be able to hit them really, really hard, to trap in on those steel types and those fairy types that Regidrago doesn't want to deal with, and anything that maybe Urshifu doesn't want to deal with, I think is fantastic, and it really fills out a good speed tier for him. It's now his fastest Pokemon at base 121, and Sucker Punch for priority is actually really nice in this meta.
Next up, we have Overquill. I love this Pokemon. This is my personal favorite, like Hisuian on. I think it looks so cool, man. It has a stupid name that I really, really like as well. Instead of Overkill being Overquill, really good Pokemon because not only does it function well outside of Rain with Intimidate, Spikes, T-Spikes, Bar Barrage, being bulky and annoying, but it's also very good under Rain, and it is a Swissel abuser that isn't sharing that water typing, which I think is such a cool aspect of this Pokemon. It can Swords Dance up too with that Swissel ability. Base 115 attack, only 85 speed, so a little bit slower, but with that Rain boost, it's going to be really scary. It can also do cool things like Destiny Bond, but realistically, we're going to Swords Dance and Crunch, Gungshot, and Liquidation, and really, really break through some teams. So I'm excited to see Nate use it.
Frostlax's pick is in. I'm a big fan of this Pokemon. Great speed tier at 110 really helps him out a lot. Something a little faster than the around the same speed tier as Iron Moth, but being able to come in as a support is really, really cool. Access to spikes to get that nice little lead. Destiny Bond could be kind of spicy depending on the matchup. It didn't get Freeze Dry, which is unfortunate, but nonetheless is still a really good Ice and Ghost type Pokemon that's going to help him deal with Rapid Spin and getting rid of his hazards because he's got a lot of really good ones here, which is really dope. So Frostlass is a good fit on this team.
Next up, Rotom-Mow, or as the kids say, Monch. I like this Pokemon a lot. D.Rey as well. Probably a little bit more than me, but I think this thing fits the team really well. I think one of the few things that I really struggle with right now was Waters. I didn't appreciate Waters very much. I had like good, like that was it. And then just naturally pressuring them. But having a Pokemon that always switches in on them, always, and just clicks Volt Switch is awesome. More momentum into my Chien-Pao, into my Enamorus, into my Slitherwing to form a cool, Volt Turn core as well with those two guys. I think this Pokemon's going to be really solid. Again, losing Pain Split, Defog, and Toxic, but still having everything else and still being very good with everything else. So I'm definitely super, super excited.
That's the second tie to Dracovish as the kill leader in Season 2. Just saying, is a famous one around here in the BBR. We have Electros. I'm a big fan of this Pokemon. I actually didn't know much about it until I had it last season. I did have it in the previous season in Season 5, and on this team, it was one of my MVPs. Honestly, it came almost to probably 90% of my games and really did any kind of role fantastically. Having an electric type Pokemon with access to Levitate with no weaknesses sounds kind of cool, sounds busted, and it really is when you have it in practice. Access to Assault Vest for a really bulky aspect to it. It gets Pivot, Momentum, and U-Turn, and Volt Switch to just soak up a hit for anything on the team. Get something else in. Bulk up sets, coil sets with Drain Punch. Great Pokemon.
Next up, we have Hisuian Avalugg. He is taking up the entire screen coffee table. But again, more rapid spin, so more hazard control, which is pretty cool. And for 2 points, it's honestly good value. While the Pokemon might not be the best, it's just worse Avalugg, which simply did not seem possible. Worse Avalugg is very good value at 2 points. It's going to spin, it can recover, it's going to be a good physical check to a lot of things. I'm a bit more of a regular Avalugg fan, but it also gives him a flying resist, and he didn't have one of those up to this point. So that's a actual benefit to getting this thing instead of the other Avalugg. But realistically, it's going to function as a spinner, and that's about it. Speaking of ice type spinners,
we have Cryogonal. This is one of the better ones. I like it a lot. I'm a huge Cryogonal fan. I will say, though, as a big Cryogonal fan, I'm very sad it lost access to Toxic. That was one of its main ways to help break through teams. But having access to very powerful Freeze Dries is really cool. A fantastic speed tier, I believe, in 105, if I remember off the top of my head. And access to Levitate is really cool. But being able to come in reliably and rapid spin away, very nice. And as a budget spinner for only 4 points, it doesn't really hurt his team composition in regards to investing what he's going to get later on. I think it's really, really cool. It does bring value and it does have merit to come each and every week, and it assists a little bit with breaking down those bulky water types and maybe if they're physically defensive, the Iron Hands can deal with. So I like it on this team. Oh man. Next
up,
oh no.
John drafted Weavile. Everybody laugh at John. Everybody in the chat laugh at John. He had drafted Weavile. So the reason John drafted Weavile on this team is very slow. It's very, very slow. This is the best Pokemon available that he could draft for that speed tier at this point in time, in said draft. So I understand in that regards. We've obviously had a bit of a fall from grace. He's sitting down there in 10 points where he would have been 16, 17 last generation with knockoff and triple axle, but still fast. He gives him good priority, and the ice stab is still strong, but man, this Pokemon is a solid drop from grace, and I think John knows that as well, but it's a necessary evil, so I understand it.
And then we have Ampharos. Now we have Amel doing Amel things. Oh my goodness. I honestly, I'll be 100% honest. I don't know what the fuck this Pokemon does. It's an electric type. That's what I know. It's from Johto and it gets electric type moves. But from what I see on paper, this thing's kind of slow. I have never, ever seen anyone have this personally and draft it. So I'm more of a noob in regards to like the showdown scene. I don't know if this is very good, but I'm very excited to see what it could be done in Amel's hands. He literally made Ice Cube famous. So I will never discount Amel. I'm very terrified. It's all a big question mark for me and I'm so excited. This is probably the biggest highlight for me of his team to see what he does with that, because I don't know what the fuck is going on with the Ampharos. And meanwhile, I'm gonna monopolize what the things that I love. I love Haxorus. I can't, like, this Pokemon's so strong. 147 attack. If you go to your showdown website, you click attack and whatever is the highest, Haxorus is up there and I absolutely love it. It is a fantastic Dragon Dance sweeper, a Swords Dance breaker, access to first impression for priority. This Pokemon with the band or a life orb is so overwhelming for teams to deal with. I'm just so sad they nerfed him and made him little. Poor guy, he's a raptor now, which is cool and all, but nonetheless, Haxorus is just such a good comfort pick for me and I love that I can just have it to just come in and click a button.
This team was perfect. Until he drafted a Cresselia. I love this team so much that he drafted this dog shit Pokemon. I'm not big on Cress, right? It saw a stat nerf this gen, it lost Toxic this gen, so it's even worse than it was previously. Now, I will say one aspect to this that I do really like with this team, and it's sad, it's when Cresselia dies and uses Lunar Blessing and heals something back up, which is, or not Lunar Blessing, Lunar Dance. Lunar Blessing is like jungle dance or jungle healing for Zarude, but Lunar Dance is a really cool aspect of this team. Getting back up your Goldengo, your Urshifu, your Gren, back up the full. That's a cool aspect. I'm not a big Crest guy, otherwise it's a bit passive and exploitable.
Yeah, take one for the team, Pokemon. So with Vepsis, thick Pokemon. Speaking of Vepsis, Quillfish. God damn it. I used to hate this Pokemon and then I started using it and then I fell in love with it. This is a poison water type, very bulky Pokemon. This does not have an evolution just like the Hisuian Quillfish does, so this cannot hold Eviolite, but nonetheless it still does what it did in past generations. But very bulky Pokemon, access to Intimidate, access to Toxic Spikes and Spikes, so it can set hazards for his team, which is really nice. Aqua Jet for some priority. It gets Swords Dance if you want to set up sweep. If he wants to click Rain Dance on one of his Pokemon, really cool pairing here with Bundle and Tornadus, so maybe something we can watch out for.
Next up, Dell grabs Hisuian Decidueye, which is a really cool Pokemon. Honestly, probably the most overtuned move in the game is Triple Arrows, giving a defense drop on the Pokemon that's switching in with 90 base power, by the way. Keep that in mind, this isn't a weak move. 90 base power, drops defense, ups crit rate, and can flinch if you are somehow faster, which is cool. It gives him some hazard control as well. Right now, he has no means of removing hazards, but Hisuian Decidueye gives him that. Gives him knockoff, which he didn't have up to this point. It gives him more momentum. U-turn, it gives him a more traditional ground resist outside of his immunity. So ground types really aren't doing shit against this team, which is really nice with the Chi-Yu. So definitely really solid. Definitely like the model out for him.
I am personally extremely surprised. We went into this draft and this was one of my mons on my list. I always go into drafts. I personally love to draft. This is my favorite aspect and I personally like to believe that I'm a very strong drafter. It's regards to like putting it into practice is really what I need to get it going. But in regards to like me on my list, I thought that this Pokemon is so freaking good and it came back and I really wanted to use it and we put it at 10 points. So I am very surprised it fell down to round number 9. This is a fantastic typing in dark and poison. Only having a 2x weakness to ground is really nice. Alolan Muck, it lost some stuff, right? We nerfed the super berries, that's a thing. It lost recycle in the first place, which is a thing, but also it still does everything else really well. It retained knockoff, which is fantastic. Also with poison touch to get that cheeky, I have that on my team. I know how strong it can be, but being able to get rest talk sets up, being able to soak up Toxic Spice for his team and really allow for other teams to have that aspect that they can't set up with their Psychic type is fantastic. This is just a big sponge, good offensive threat, good coverage. It did lose Shadow Sneak, which is unfortunate, but still being able to have access to Drain Punch as a buff is really cool. So some tradeaways and some takeaways, but Muck I think is really good. So I think that this is the biggest highlight for me in round 9. But what do you think about round 9?
Yeah, I definitely really like this pickup for round 9. I like Frostlass as well. Droopy, some spikes. His team really wanted some spikes, so getting that as an aspect of his team is really cool. And again, I'm so excited for Overclow, man. I love that Pokemon. I think it's so cool. I think that is like the perfect place to draft it. And I did want to mention with Ampharos, you said, is there some hidden tech? No, that is Amel drafting fucking Ampharos for some reason. So you are not missing anything. He drafted Ampharos on purpose. So that's about it.
I don't know, man. Like, if there's one player in the community that you'll be terrified with literally anything on a draft board, it's Amel. So keep your eyes out for that one, guys. So now we have round number 10. Keep in mind, this is going to be the last round for the majority of the teams. So thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us. We really do appreciate it. We're actually moving kind of fast, which is fantastic. We're well below the 3-hour mark, which is awesome for a draft. I think that we're doing a great job. Fantastic us. Owen, you've been doing awesome. You guys are awesome as well. Please do me a massive favor. If you have not, if you can do one thing for me, please go into the description, grab a link to the Discord server, hop on in and join in on the conversation. Intermingle with us. I would love to get to know each and every one of you. Grab your role, support us throughout the season, and let's hop on into it. We have round number 10, which is the final for most. Driftblim shows up on this squad. I think Driftblim is very disrespected. Very good ghost and flying type Pokemon. Access to Unburden can be pretty spicy. No terrain just yet, but nonetheless it still has opportunities to get that Unburden boost, and also has access to Will-O-Wisp and a very powerful move in String Sap. I think the String Sap is fantastic, being able to get that -1 attack drop and being able to heal itself up based on the attack power of who it's String Sapped. Great Pokemon. Being able to come in and be immune to earthquakes. It's a rapid spin blocker. Great overall pivot. It's a good setup Pokemon. Very fat. It fills a lot of roles, and for the price point that it's at, I think it's great.
Komala. Dell loves him some Komala. I think he had this at a point last season. And he uses his bundle check, which is pretty funny. Now, it is a rapid spinner, and it can, be a ghost immunity. His team is still very weak to ghost, in my opinion, right? I think Chiyu as a resistant, Komala as a immunity is a bit tough, but it gives him an immunity. So now you can't just run Choice Scarf as freely. You still might be able to, but you can't run it as freely, right? You also get access to rapid spin, being a decent enough hazard removal for 2 points, and it did lose access to Last Resort, which I think is really tough, because I think a lot of the fun of this Pokemon came from clicking Sleep Talk, Last Resort, and clicking a button and killing something when there's no normal resistance on the other side. But for 2 points, I don't think it's bad value at all.
Last Resort, sad. Miss Magius. We have Fluttermane's cousin? Distant cousin from afar, from the future, being able to come in and still do what Miss Maggie has done. This is the same Pokemon as it's always been. All reliable and very cheap. This is the Costco version of a really good ghost type. If you want Gengar, now we got Gengar at home. Miss Maggie has retained Levitate that Gengar used to have, and current fantastic coverage. It's got not as fast as Gengar, but it still does relatively the same thing. It can still function as a defensive pivot with Will-O-Wisp is really nice. Access to that plus Hex is really spicy. Great coverage. This mon can be really under the radar.
The Wiggles! He went! Wigglytuff goes for Pepsis here. Now, honestly, again, for 2 points, this is great value. And it rounds out the team. It gives him that dragon. Which right now, he didn't have one. He had, or no, he had a
Azumarill.
He had a Azumarill.
Normal type.
I'm tripping. He gives him a normal. There you go. I knew something good about it. So, again, another team that I consider very ghost big, like Gengar, runs his fade. Absolutely runs his fate. Things like Dragalge that can actually take hits, but man, it's gonna go crazy on him. But it gives him an immunity, so those specs and those Scarf Ghosts aren't gonna be as free. It also gives him a Dragapult check, which is really funny. When he plays Keegan, he has something to kind of deal with Pult, whereas otherwise he would have just gotten 6-0'd by it. So I actually like this pick a lot. 2 points, you can't go wrong.
So this is my last pick of my team. This is my cherry on top. This is Espeon. Espeon for me, I wanted to go 2 different ways. I could use my last 6 points to get a couple, maybe like a 3-pointer and a 1-pointer, or 2 2s. And at this point I'm like, or 2 3s I should say. And at this point I'm like, no, I want to get whatever's best is going to fit on my team instead of having more variety. So I feel like this is really nice to fill up my speed tiers. Base 110 is fantastic for my team. I got 126, 120, and now 110. I think it's chef's kiss. Access to Magic Bounce is huge this generation. Another aspect for me to be able to protect hazards as well as any kind of status condition. Now I've got screens, a reliable screen setter, access to Morning Sun for longevity. Steel type suck on it, but I'll just switch. There.
Next up we have Amel, and he's back to his old base, man. He's got a sauce buck here. I said, Amel, when we were talking, I was like, why'd you get sauce buck? And he's like, it's your ground resist. I said, no, it's not a ground resist. Did you get it for a ghost immunity? Oh, nope, you have the Cyclozar. Amel will make it work, though. I'm sure he will. Maybe he saw a matchup, he goes, this is the anti-Sunmon. I'm going to beat John with it. I have no clue. but Amo will make it work. This Pokemon, it does get access to Chlorophyll, Serene Grace as well, so they can do some things. Like D.Rey said, though, I can't shit on Amo for any picks because he makes things work that I would never make work. And you can see he still has a lot of points left, so maybe we'll get something cool in the final round that he's saving up for. We'll see.
Brambleghast, 4 points, I think is... I'm a big fan of Brambleghast. I think it's pretty cool. Good typing. It's got the Decidueye typing of Grass and Ghost. For 4 points, we got a Rapid Spinner. We got Strength Sap. Nice little aspect for it. Block Spin. Really good. Being able to access to, with Grimmsnarl and dual screens, giving it a little bit more of a bulk and allows it to support the team just a little bit more. I think it's fantastic. Brambleghast is just that budget spinner that's able to roll compress and also ensure that his opponent doesn't rapid spin his stuff away. And it also gets spikes. So being able to be a remover and set up hazards at the same time, I'm a big fan of.
Oh, for sure.
Ghost types galore.
Oh yeah, next up, Palisand here. Actually, a really solid low tier ground. I like this thing a lot. He didn't have that ground type yet, and he only had one rocker. Or no, two rockers. He had OC, BMC. So a third rocker is always great. I think 3 is a great number to hit. When it comes to Stealth Rock, it's also good to have that fighting immunity. And when you have Double Dark, you know, that's not draggable. It takes a little bit of pressure off of that guy. Defensively, only 7 points. You really can't go wrong with Palisand here. I like it a lot. Its ability is pretty useless. I wish it was just Water Absorb that gave you a defense boost. I feel like it's not too broken on a Pokemon with this thing's stats, but it's still a very good physically defensive Pokemon. Also checks offensive grounds, which his team does not like right now.
Magneton, I'm a big fan of. I like Magneton a lot. I personally fancy Magneton more than I fancy Magnezone. Reason for it, a little bit faster, can pull off a couple more sets a little bit better in my personal opinion. Even though, like, this Pokemon had the intention in Gen 1 to be a standalone Pokemon, they just gave it an evolution later on in life, meaning that it's still good with Eviolite because it was supposed to be that standalone. Great typing, Steel and Electric. Volts, which is nice. Being able to trap in Steels could be really fancy. It's not a Terra type, so it doesn't have access to Fire type coverage, but nonetheless, Magneton still does really cool stuff. It could be a bulky pivot as a Steel type, which is really nice with crazy resistances, or super offensive with Choice Scarf or Choice Specs.
Next up, we have Gastron here for Kyle. Really important pickup for him. If you looked up to this point, no ground, no water. So I really like this pickup. It's really going to fill up a couple of things that he did not appreciate. It also gives him more hazards, which is so important. He has a Steel type that can't rock. Now he has 2 rockers in the Cleavor with Stone Axe and just regular Stealth Rock, and the Gastron. He has 2 Spikers in Quillfish and Gastro. So I really like him grabbing more hazards so he can passively chip things down for that backed Skeledirge and Cleavor to hopefully win games, even things like Breloom picking things off. So this is a very important pickup for Kyle. I'm glad he ended up grabbing it. Next up is mine, Hisuian Typhlosion. I wanted a little bit more offense. I actually, fun fact, maybe I'm gassing myself up a little bit, I felt like I covered everything perfectly up to this point. There was not anything left on the board that I felt like I needed to grab to really round out my team. So I grabbed a Hisuian Typhlosion. Because the only thing I somewhat really wanted is I like the special fire type to really break through those seals, so things like POW or maybe like a Choice Locked Enamorous would appreciate. And I also like the spin block option to prevent my opponent from spinning on things like the Glamora setting up a bunch of hazards, Muzzle setting up rocks, things like that. It can be strong with eruption sets. It spreads more passive damage with Will-O-Wisp and Infernal Parade, and really chips things down so that my top end offense can pop off.
Oh yeah, and Infernal Parade, I found out that it does more damage once you're statused, and it already has a 30% chance to burn. I think it's fire. Arboliva. I like Arboliva. I think Arboliva is under the radar. Very budget. We put it at 5 points. I personally think we should have put it at least 5 or 6, like 6 or 7. Great normal type and great grass type, and doesn't do the normal grass type things in regards to being super defensive because it's weak to fighting types that normally have ground type coverage. But nonetheless, this is a very good offensive piece. It's very slow, but being able to have that aspect to set up the grassy terrain to boost up Hisuian Lilligant's attacks and also boost up the Terra grass Iron Moth is actually kind of spicy, and put into a little passive recovery for the Garganacl was also really nice.
Tornadus, this is an awesome pickup. I love this. Now again, it's a little bit redundant with things like Rain in general is kind of like functions in the overload principle of having a bunch of offense and clicking buttons and really overwhelming things. So the things that check Noivern and the same shit that checks Tornadus. So if they're both clicking buttons, it can only really check one unless it's a really good check. Same thing with like Dreadnought, Basket, Legion, Overquill. So I like that aspect of it. Gives them a solid speed tier as well. Can pivot around with momentum and U-turn, and has really strong hurricanes to throw off in the rain and can click buttons. So definitely pretty darn exciting in that regard. So
I'm a
good
big
pickup.
fan, Tor. I think that mon's cool. More Grim. We have discount Costco version Grimmsnarl. 2 points. 2-point Pokemon setup screens. We'll take it. I mean, this is going to be his second fairy type, and he really doesn't have a fairy type that does fairy type things because of the secondary typing that's on Tinkaton. Even though it is a great typing, as some fairies want to fill up a specific role. I'm not sure if I'm the biggest fan of this pick, but I can see what he's doing. I see he's trying to facilitate more setup options with his Urshifu, get in his other threats that are very, we'll say, frail, and so that way they can come in a little safer. His Sweet and Braviary also is a very undercover setup threat, so there's a lot of things that this can facilitate, so question mark, but we'll see how it goes.
Next up, Quilladin. What a steal, man. Honestly, we forgot to put Quilladin on the dock, which is crazy because, fun fact, we might run out of time on this slide. When we were doing the tiers, I recorded and never uploaded it because me, Kurt, and Dell doing tiers, and they kept making me put these shitty NFE Pokemon in 2 points because they knew it was making me mad. They were like, nah, man, Dartrix 2 points. But then these shitheads forgot Quilladin, and we didn't tier Quilladin because I was too angry about tiering Quaxwell and Dartrix in 2 points. I was so mad. And then this comes around, and the actual 2-point NFUmon comes up. This is a good steal for slacking. Good spikes, gives him a ground resist. Ground resist Quilladin is a little bit tough, but it's better than no ground resist, right? And for 1 point, you can't really go wrong. I actually really love this Pokemon. I think it's a great pickup. And blame Kurt and Dell. I can't believe those guys. Oh my god.
So I paused this. I paused the stream here for a second because I also want to say the fact that Dr. Slacking he remembered this Pokemon in the past from him using in the past, and we know that he's comfortable with it because, like Owen said, we did indeed forget to put it on the dock. That's why it's only 1 point. An absolute steal. It gets access to, I believe it also gets spikes, if I remember correctly, which is really cool. So
Spike,
it's a pure
Super Fang.
Yeah, it's a pure grass type, so it's one of those mons that's able to really be a big sponge for it, and it also gets synthesis, if I remember correctly. So great Pokemon, great steal for him. And yes, we blame Dell because we ended up getting Dartrix on there instead. So then the last pick that we have here is going to be Houndstone. We have Houndstone coming from first overall to our BBR veteran, Mr. Mephisto, now falling from grace on the same kind of archetype team as before. It's still on with Tyranitar, so they're still staying together, stay together forever, but it is banned from using Last Respects. So in order for us to be able to not lose not only Houndstone but Basque Legion as well, we just banned Last Respects as a whole, so that way we don't have to ban 3 other Pokemon. So to allow for more versatility in the draft, we just banned the move in general. So now Houndstone has fallen from grace from super high to 5 points, but with Fluffy it can still be pretty spicy. It's still a spin blocker, gets access to priority and shadow sneak, so it can still do some stuff. It's just not the Last Respect shenanigans that it had before. And if he wants to get spicy with it and run the Sand Rush ability, watch out, because it still has other stabs it can do, and it has access to body press. It can still be pretty bulky, so it's still a Houndstone for 5 points. A big discount, but we'll see how he does with it with that Sand Rush. But what do you think about this last one? A lot of teams picked last. What are you thinking about the last little cherry on top for these squads?
The first pick that you mentioned in Drifblim being slept on, I super agree. That was the Pokemon that sent Jaybear to finals last season against Joey with the cool Mirror Herb Unburden set, stopping a Spothra. So there's a lot of really cool aspects of like these lower tier Pokemon where they might not look scary on paper or as scary on paper as some of these crazy probably previous rounds, but that's what makes this format so cool, is that those shitty Pokemon at the bottom have so much value in certain specific niche matchups, and if a team is drafted well, it accounts for those and covers those, and it's just going to be a lot of fun to see Pokemon like that.
And this is it, team. Round number 11. My first message to you guys again. Thank you so much for hanging out in here. At one point, we had 160 recurring people. After the first 4 rounds, they fell off to 100, and now we're at 43. We're looking, the likes are matching up, guys. So if you want to hit those likes for us, that'd be really nice for us to be able to boost this out, get the BBR word out there. We're still going to have a fantastic season. I am very excited for it. Reminder, exclamation point favorite team, exclamation point Flygon to get the link to Keegan's channel, so on and so forth. A lot of teams are done here. There's a couple picks that still kind of linger off to use off some points, and not all teams used all their points because they didn't feel like it was necessary. So moving on to round number 11, here we got it going. We got moving over with Mr. J. Ricky picking up Vigoroth, and somewhere John Jr. is screaming in excitement. Vigoroth is an Eviolite normal type Pokemon, a budget pick, at 2 points. With Eviolite, it is very, very bulky. Unlike its evolution, Slacking, it did not have the really terrible ability and been having to basically wait every other turn to attack, so this is a very good offensive threat. Vigoroth could be a Pokemon that's got a question mark on it being the normal type, being so weak to knockoff, but since knockoff is so under distributed in Gen 9, it's still really, really good. Not many Pokemon get knockoff, so being able to reliably hold on to that Eviolite is really, really nice.
Cheesecake next up. Look how cute he is, man. How can you look at this thing and quick against it? He is too damn cute. Now remember, keep in mind, this Pokemon cannot run Revival Blessing. We have Revival Blessing banned because the idea of having a free revive in a competitive Pokemon game, in a counter team format specifically, is a bit broken in our opinion, especially in draft. Maybe not in Smogon at least, but in draft for sure. So it can't click Mickey Revival Blessing, but it's still going to be very strong. Iron Fist alongside Elemental Punches. It's great dual stab of Electric and Fighting. It's very fast and base 105 speed, so nice solid speed tier right there. And you can Volt Switch. It has a really strong stab option in Double Shock and Close Combat, allowing it to click buttons. It can even bulk up. It can do a ton of fun things. Kurt loved it last season. Anybody who's used it has loved it from what I've seen. So, good Pokemon.
I've been seeing this manga drafted very often, even without Terra. I just have never really dove into Venomoth enough to really care too much about the Pokemon. I know what it does. I just don't see it really taken away or running away with teams as everyone says it does. Mind you, Tinted Lens is busted. Being able to maintain your stabs and have one coverage move to really hit everything neutral after a Quiver Dance set sounds disgusting, 100%. But if you look at this thing's stats, it's really not that mediocre. But nonetheless, being able to facilitate it with Morgram and that dual screens, it could be really bad. And I say that now, I'm gonna get swept by fucking Venomoth. But I don't. It's a good mon. It's an 8 point Pokemon. I find it a little bit expensive, but I'm curious to see what he does with it.
Next up, we have Farigiraf on a team that really, really did not appreciate a lot of ghosts. You have things like King Gambit, but it's going to be your Terra Cap. You're not going to want to. Plus, if it tears into a Fairy type, not going to resist anymore. And this is like Overquill isn't going to be something to take hit. So I like Farigiraf in that regards, giving you an immunity, giving Wish into this team that really appreciates things like Overquill, things like Basculete, and things like Gardevoir, King Gambit, and Great Tusk. All appreciate it. Guard had it before, but this is a much better usage of that move. It's also a grass immunity, which is always good with your rain teams. Not having to take those hits is always going to be a great thing. So I definitely like this pickup a lot.
Berserker! Welcome back, Drewby. He is the first time being able to use this Pokemon. Drewby was not with us in Generation 8, so it's really cool for him to see not only the new Pokemon here in Scarlet and Violet, but also the new Pokemon from Sword and Shield. The Berserker is one mon from there. It's a Steel type.
Of all time.
It's a Steel type, but I mean, like, it's a pretty decent offensive Steel type. It doesn't have the Steel type capabilities that you want a Steel type to have, in my personal opinion, but it is still really offensive with Tough Claws boosted moves, and it gets pretty good coverage. Things like Close Combat to help facilitate his Steel type moves. It gets a Steely Spirit, which is something that could be watching out for, but we'll see how he does with it.
Next up, we have Hawlucha here from Kyle, giving him a very solid speed tier. His team is incredibly. It is very, very slow to this point, so having that 150 plus mon, he's going to be really solid. Not only does it have those like set up on burden sets with like wider Close Combat, Power Herb, Sky Attack, but you also have access to Mold Breaker, which is a great ability. If you're playing the Goldango team and you're like, I need Hazard, you can actually defog in that thing's face. You can taunt, you can U-turn around, you get Roost. You get a bunch of utility options that you typically don't see from Lucha, because it's typically around generations where the taboos are there, and you're going to, see it alongside a Seed and try to set up and win, which is a great option, but it's a lot more versatile than people give it credit for, so I definitely like the pickup.
Kaz, it's my life. I do agree. Kyle did win WB championship with Hawlucha, so we'll see how that goes. He probably wants to repeat here in the BBR. Wo-Chin Reaction has been drafted. Look how like salty he looks with his eyes. It's just side-eyeing you. This Pokemon gets so much disrespect from so many people, but it is still one of the Ruination Pokemon, so the ability is absolutely disgusting. The Dark and Grass typing, meh, depending on who you ask. 4 times weakness to U-turn on a pivot that most all mons run, kind of meh. But great ground resist, really annoying with Leech Seed, Protect Shenanigans, and Knockoff is really cool for a Dark type stab.
Next up is Tauros, and this is a Pokemon I love, man. I love regular. I love the speed tier that it offers his team.
in 110. I love how strong it is offensively with sheer force, plus that Gen 1 coverage can be very, very difficult to deal with. Normal stat plus sheer force boosted rock slides, and then having access to moves like Earthquake and close combat as well, making it very, very scary. Intimidate is also a great option for it. I've seen bulkier Tauruses run. I remember back in Gen 7, Leo, 6-foot hacks, used to run bulky Tauruses all the time in his drafting games. I remember always thinking like, oh, that's really smart. So it's definitely an aspect of this Pokemon that's pretty slept on. It's not as cool as the new Paldean Tauruses with the water and fire forms, but it's still very good as a low tier normal.
And now we have Galarian Articuno. He has completed the trifecta. We have all 3 Galarian birds on one team, as well as both horses. Sword and Shield Incarnate is here. We have Galarian Articuno. That is going to be, honestly guys, I think this is just an Amo moment. There's no reason for this to be here. He had the points for it. We pressured him to do it, and he delivered. He delivered. And so I would not be surprised if he puts in the work with Articuno. It is still a fantastic Pokemon. Great dual stabs. Kind of gets shit on by steel types because it doesn't have that coverage, but nonetheless, being able to push through some stuff and having access to a psychic type move that has a chance to freeze can be pretty spicy.
Next up, we have Swalot Big Back Shots here. Now, this is actually, it's no great Pokemon, right? But for 2 points, you need that grounded poison because your team hates T-Spikes and your removal kind of sucks. This is going to be a good Pokemon. It really is. So, considering it has great coverage as an early gen mon, it's solid with an AV, it can set up its own T-Spikes for your team, which this team would love having T-Spikes on it as well. For 2 points, you're not going to get much better value, honestly. Very, very cool to see. So, I'm definitely here for Swallow. Also, I want to mention with Amel, we actually all had a bet preseason, and somebody accidentally told him Ant, but we were all betting on how many points he would have left over, and he spent way more than we thought. I think I said 22, and I was the closest. So, pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, he's had, so it's a on paper better team. So shout out to Amel. Cloth. I'm glad someone took it, man. This is the last pick. This is the exclamation point of season 6. Cloth made it. This is Mr. Irrelevant. We have Cloth being taken, which is fantastic. Cloth got the best ability in the game. He's got Regenerator, so he's able to sit back at this. He's able to sit at the adult table. Big Cloth is here. Pure rock typing. If he can set up Sand, he gets a Spadef boost. Pair that off with Regenerator, I think it's kind of nice. Ingershell is really cool. It's like a nerfed version of Shell Smash, which is really nice to just get automatic setup just by taking the hit. Is really cool. Regenerator obviously is still much better, but it gets decent coverage. It would like a little bit more. It gets Crab Hammer because it's a crab, which is really cool. But being able to facilitate setup for itself, but also still having a bulky aspect to it, maybe running some Assault Vest sets paired off with Regenerator. There's some potential here. No one's really taken that chance, so big shout out to D.Rey here. But here it is, man. We're at the end. Any final thoughts on any of the teams?
Did you know that Cloth makes a mooing noise when he gets drafted? Or when he gets sent out, he sounds like a cow. So I think that's a pretty cool aspect of the team as well. He does, he moves, and it's fucking hilarious. We love Cloth. He's very cute. As for the drafts themselves, there's some insane teams here. I think J-Bear has a nuts team. I think that Vepsis has an absolutely insane team. I think Keegan's team is, in my opinion, the best team in the draft, by far, outside of my own, but I'm broken and handsome and really good, so I can't really compare myself to others. But, I mean, there's some really cool squads here. Lots of unique picks, too. Like you said, we just saw Cloth get drafted. We've seen some really cool stuff, so I'm hoping that we have a really interesting season, and hopefully all these coaches can do well with the squads they end up drafting. I'm really excited.
So we have instructed for those who couldn't make it here at the draft stream in regards to our team that participated this season, our coaches, that it'll be safe for them to set up their uploads at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is actually 14 minutes from now. So big pats on back to Owen and I for being able to nail this under 3 hours. I think that's top tier. I hope you guys did enjoy. Again, make sure you smash that thumbs up button, as well as going down to the description. Grab the link to the Discord server. We're all there. We're all hanging out. It's a very active place. There's a big, incredible community. We had a really awesome season last season. We've grown immensely, and I feel like it's an awesome place to hang out. It's an awesome place to be yourself. You can intermingle with all the coaches. There will be, like I said in the beginning of the draft stream, some exterior BBR content piloted by our boy Kirby. Kirby's taking a little step back. Yeah, Kirby's taking a little step back. Coach of the Winnipeg Blue Blastoise to be able to give himself a little bit of a break and a breather, so that way he can bring back Evil Kurt and CS a little bit in future seasons. But now he's going to spearhead all this content. There's a chat, I should say, for all the roles of all the coaches, as well as grabbing a role whenever he goes live for pick'ems, for live watch-alongs. We're all going to join him as well, but he's going to be spearheading all of that. He's got some great stuff planned. My man is a diabolical being when it comes down to making graphics, so he's got some cool things in the lab cooking up for you guys. I'm very excited for it. Hop on in there, support Kurt as well, and everyone else this season. Owen, thank you, bro, for joining me. You're always so fucking good doing this kind of stuff. But you have any final thoughts before we kind of sign off here?
No, like D.Rey said, go join the Discord server. It's popping. We got a bunch of coaches. Draft analysis, they go live in 15. Go grab the coaches' roles that you see upload so you know exactly what you can be. Great way to start the day. Make sure you see everybody. Every coach is in the description below. We have a lot of new creators coming back to draft after a while. So please go check out everybody. Give them a chance. Everybody's gonna make some great content. And this is the most stacked season of BBR talent-wise we have ever had. I think it might be one of the most stacked Wi-Fi leagues ever. There's some really incredible coaches. So I'm super excited.
You hit that on the head, bro. That was my closing thought. I'm not saying this as a toot of our own horn. I was lucky enough to be able to assemble a lot of BBR veterans here. A lot of these coaches have played in the BBR in past seasons, and the ones that we did bring along as content creators themselves, they are incredibly talented, creating things for their own channels, and coming back to draft as a 50% combination to that really warms my heart. People like Drewby coming back to the draft league scene. We've got Galvany coming back. That's incredible. We have Kyle A, that last time he was in the BBR went completely undefeated and left a huge void, and he wants to come back even stronger. A lot of really cool coaches got pulled up here, like J.Ricky, who put on an absolute show in the BBR D League. Literally was a unanimous decision to bring him up. Even though he did not win the championship, we saw incredible content come from him. He's an incredible battler. He's grown as a coach, and we have the champion itself himself of the D League, T-Row. Lots of talent. Overall skill wise, like Owen said, there is top-notch talent in this league, top-notch content creators, a big melting pot of everything above. And I, as a commissioner, am so excited to bring this season to you guys. It is going to be one for the record books. You do not want to miss it. Participate in the conversation, hop into the Discord server, subscribe to me if you do like me. I'm also part of the league. That'd be really, really cool. I'd appreciate it a lot. Also subscribe to Owen, my co-host. OG Albina is in the description as well. Thanks, Owen. I appreciate you guys so much. We got 10 minutes. Grab yourself a snack. Come back to your TV screens. Get ready for these draft analysis. Find out what these coaches were thinking about when they drafted their teams, what their thought process was, why they drafted what they drafted, and what they thought. Owen and I may have juiced opinions about some Pokemon, but may they have another. So make sure you go in and dive on in what their thought process was, pick their brains. Next week, week number 1. The lineup is crazy. We're in week 1 now, and these matchups are all incredible. Top-notch, highlighted ones every single week. Your Saturdays are about to be action-packed. Thank you guys so much for joining us here in the BBR Season 6 draft stream. My name is Grandmaster D.Rey. Owen, you have anything else before we take off?
Nope, you finished off perfect. We'll see you guys soon.
All right, team. Have a great rest of your day, and above all else, be nice. Peace. And